The sterile conference room smelled like brass polish and bad decisions. Emily Harper pushed the tea cart through the double doors, her worn scrubs whispering against the linoleum. 37 stars sat around that table, generals, admirals, colonels whose ribbons could fill a filing cabinet. They didn't look up. Why would they? She was just the nurse with the caffeine. She set down the first cup. A brigadier general waved her off like a mosquito. Then she saw the trajectory map on the screen, white lines arcing over topography. Her hand stopped mid-pour. The calculations in the corner were wrong. Not a little wrong. Fatally wrong. "Ma'am, that's incorrect." Her voice barely carried. The room didn't just go quiet. It went cold. "Excuse me?" The Admiral's tone could freeze diesel fuel. Emily's pulse hammered, but her voice stayed level. "The wind compensation formula. It's off by 200 meters. Someone laughed. Someone else swore. The major running the briefing stabbed a finger toward the door. "Get her out!" But the intel officer was already checking. His face went white. He looked at Emily like she'd just spoken fluent Mandarin while juggling grenades. She was right. Every single general went dead silent. "Oh, before we go any further, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, because what happens next is going to shatter everything you think you know about power and respect. Like this video. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, because I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's get back to Emily Harper and the room full of people who just made the worst mistake of their military careers. The major's face flushed the color of a warning flare. "I said get out. We don't have time for—" "She's correct, sir." The intel officer's voice cracked. He was staring at his tablet like it had just diagnosed him with something terminal. "The formula's using outdated atmospheric pressure data. If we'd proceeded with this—" "You're telling me a nurse caught a mistake that you missed?" The Admiral's words came out sharp enough to draw blood. Emily picked up the tea tray. Her hands didn't shake. They never did anymore. "I apologize for the interruption." She turned toward the door, already calculating her next move. "Wait." The Admiral's command stopped her mid-step. "What's your name?" "Emily Harper, sir. Civilian contractor. I work in post-op recovery." A colonel with a face like a clenched fist snorted. "Post-op recovery. Jesus Christ. And somehow you know ballistic trajectory calculations?" "I read a lot, sir." The laughter that rippled through the room wasn't kind. It was the sound of powerful men reasserting their control over a situation that had briefly tilted sideways. The major grabbed the door handle. "Thank you for the tea, Ms. Harper. We'll take it from here." She walked out. The door clicked shut behind her with a sound like a coffin closing. In the hallway, Emily stood perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a single text. They took the bait. The response came back immediately. "Recording?" Every word. She pocketed the phone and pushed her cart toward the elevator. Her reflection in the polished doors showed exactly what they expected to see. A tired woman in cheap scrubs, forgettable and disposable. She'd spent 6 months building that image. 6 months smiling at people who looked through her. 6 months pouring coffee and changing bedpans and listening to conversations that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. The elevator descended to the 3rd floor. Emily stepped out into the controlled chaos of the post-surgical wing. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency between beds. Monitors beeped their steady rhythms. Everything looked exactly as it should, except it wasn't. Blackridge Military Medical Complex wasn't just a hospital. It was a fortress wrapped in a hospital's skin. The top 3 floors were pure medical facility, trauma bays and operating rooms and recovery wards. But the bottom 2 floors existed on classified blueprints, accessible only through biometric checkpoints and security clearances that most of the doctors upstairs would never see. Emily had clearance for all of it. They just didn't know that. "Hey, Harper." Nurse supervisor Denise Kowalski appeared with a clipboard and the expression of someone who'd been dealing with administrative nonsense all morning. "You pull a double last night?" "Couldn't sleep anyway." "You never sleep." Denise's eyes carried the weight of genuine concern. "When's the last time you took a day off?" "I'll rest when I'm dead." "That's what I'm worried about." Denise handed over the clipboard. "Patient in 304 is asking for you specifically. Says you're the only one who doesn't treat him like a training dummy." Emily scanned the chart. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, 26, recovering from shrapnel wounds after an IED incident in Kandahar. Third surgery in 2 weeks. She'd been the one to hold his hand through the worst of the pain, the nights when morphine couldn't touch what was eating him from the inside. I'll check on him now. Harper? Denise's voice dropped. Whatever you're doing up there with the brass, be careful. Those people don't forgive mistakes. I know. Do you? Because I've seen what happens when someone gets on the wrong side of the command structure in this place. They disappear, not fired, just gone. Emily met her eyes. I appreciate the concern. Really. She walked away before Denise could push further. The hallway stretched ahead, fluorescent lights humming their eternal song. Emily had walked this path so many times her feet knew every crack in the tile. But today felt different. Today the walls seemed to lean in closer, like they were listening. Room 304 was at the end of the corridor. Emily knocked once and entered. Marcus was sitting up in bed, trying to look at his phone with hands that shook too badly to hold it steady. He looked up when she entered, and something in his face relaxed. There you are. I was starting to think they'd reassigned you. Not yet. Emily checked his vitals, her movements smooth and automatic. Pain level? Manageable. The new meds help. He hesitated. You hear about what happened to Delta Team? Emily's hand paused for half a second on the IV line. What happened? Ambush. 15 kilometers outside Kabul. They got hit hard, real hard. Only one survivor, and he's not talking. Marcus's voice dropped. They're saying it was bad intel. Someone leaked their position. The air in the room shifted. Emily finished checking the drip and marked the chart. That's terrible. Terrible? Marcus's laugh was bitter. It's a goddamn execution. Someone sold them out, Harper, and whoever did it is still walking around free. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. Because this is the third unit in 6 months that got compromised. 3 teams, 3 ambushes, 3 sets of funerals. You think that's coincidence? Emily pulled up a chair. This wasn't protocol. Nurses didn't sit and chat during rounds. But Emily had learned that sometimes the things people said when they thought you were just listening were worth more than gold. What do you think is happening? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. I think someone high up is dirty, real high, and I think they're going to keep killing people until someone stops them. Have you told anyone this? Who would I tell? The same command structure that's probably dirty? Yeah, that'll work out great for me. He rubbed his face. Sorry. I shouldn't be dumping this on you. It's okay. Emily stood, smoothing her scrubs. Get some rest, Marcus. You need to heal. Harper? His voice stopped her at the door. Why are you really here? She turned back. What do you mean? You're different. I see the way you watch people, the way you listen. You're not just a nurse, so what are you? Emily held his gaze. Someone who pays attention. She left before he could ask anything else. The hallway seemed longer now, the lights harsher. Her phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted number. Conference room audio is clean. How much longer? Emily typed back. Soon. They're getting sloppy. She deleted the message and pocketed her phone. The elevator chimed. Emily stepped inside and hit the button for the basement level, the one that didn't exist on the public floor directory. The doors opened to reveal a stark corridor lined with reinforced doors. A security guard looked up from his station. Ms. Harper, late shift? Just grabbing some supplies. She showed her badge, the real one, with the clearance codes that made people's eyes widen. He waved her through without another word. Emily walked past offices that handled classified communications, past rooms where intelligence analysts broke down satellite imagery, past the kind of hardware that officially didn't exist. At the end of the hall was a storage room marked medical supplies, authorized personnel only. She unlocked it and stepped inside. The room was empty except for shelving units and boxes of gauze and syringes. Emily moved to the back wall and pressed her thumb against a specific spot on the metal shelving. A panel slid aside, revealing a narrow room beyond. Inside were 3 monitors, a secure communications terminal, and enough recording equipment to make the NSA jealous. Emily sat down and pulled up the audio files from the conference room. The conversation continued after she'd left. She knew it would. People always got comfortable once they thought the hired help was gone. The Major's voice came through crystal clear. We need to adjust the operation timeline. The leak from last week compromised our entire Eastern strategy. How bad? That was the Admiral. Bad enough that we lost Delta Team. 15 good soldiers dead because someone couldn't keep their mouth shut. A new voice, Colonel Briggs, the one with the perpetual scowl. You think it's still the same source? Has to be. The pattern's too consistent. Emily leaned closer to the monitor. This was it. This was what she'd been waiting for. The Admiral sighed. We've been looking for the leak for 6 months. Either our investigator is incompetent, or they're playing a longer game than we understand. Maybe both, Briggs muttered. All I know is every operation we plan ends up in enemy hands. Someone in this complex is dirty, and until we find them, people keep dying. The Major's voice dropped. What about the Silent Angel investigation? Any progress? Silence. Then the Admiral. That's need to know. And right now, you don't need to know. Sir, with all due respect. I said drop it, Major. Emily stopped the recording. Her hands were steady, but her pulse was hammering. Silent Angel. That was her code name. The investigation they didn't know she was running. The case she'd been building brick by brick, conversation by conversation, for half a year. She pulled up a secure file and added notes from the recording. The pattern was emerging. 3 compromised operations. 3 ambushes, and at the center of it all, someone with enough access to classified briefings to know where the teams would be before they deployed. Her phone buzzed. Another encrypted message. Federal task force is ready. Just say when. Emily stared at the message. 6 months of work. 6 months of swallowing her pride while men who wouldn't last an hour in a real firefight treated her like furniture. 6 months of building an airtight case against people who thought they were untouchable. She typed, "Not yet. One more piece." The response came back. "Don't wait too long. These people are dangerous." Emily deleted the conversation and turned off the monitors. She locked the hidden room and stepped back into the storage area, adjusting her scrubs. To anyone watching, she'd just been restocking supplies. The walk back to the elevator took 30 seconds. Emily counted them. At second 28, the lights flickered. At second 30, the emergency alarm started screaming. Emily's training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up. She ran toward the stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time. The alarm meant one thing: active security breach. Either someone was trying to break in, or something had gone catastrophically wrong inside. She burst through the stairwell door into the main lobby. Chaos. People running, security officers shouting into radios. The heavy steel barriers slamming down over the exits. Denise grabbed her arm. "Harper, we're on lockdown. Someone just tried to access a classified server from inside the building." Did they catch them? No. Whoever it was knew exactly where the blind spots in our security were. Denise's face was white. "Emily, they're saying it might be one of us, someone who works here." Emily's mind raced. The timing was too perfect. Someone had just made a move. Either the leak was getting desperate, or they'd been spooked. "Where's the breach point?" "Second floor, east wing. They're evacuating that whole section." Denise looked around. "We need to get patients moved to secure areas. Can you help with—" The power cut out. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in red. In the sudden quiet, Emily could hear her own heartbeat. Then her phone buzzed. Not the encrypted one, her regular work phone. A message from an unknown number. "You're getting close. Back off or people die." Starting with Lieutenant Webb. Emily's blood turned to ice. She looked at Denise. "I need you to get security to room 304 right now." "What? Why?" "Just do it." Emily was already running. The stairs. She couldn't wait for elevators during a lockdown. 3rd floor. Her legs burned. The emergency lighting made everything look like a crime scene. Room 304's door was open. Emily's heart stopped. She entered slowly, every sense screaming. The bed was empty. Marcus's IV had been torn out, blood on the sheets. The window was open, 3 stories up. No, 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 no. She ran to the window, looked down. Marcus was on the ground below, conscious but bleeding, surrounded by security officers. He looked up at her and mouthed something. Emily read his lips. "Not me. You." The realization hit her like a truck. The threat wasn't about Marcus. It was about making her react, making her break protocol, showing whoever was watching that she cared about more than just pushing a medication cart. She'd just revealed herself. Footsteps behind her. Emily turned. The Admiral stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 MPs. His face was unreadable. "Emily Harper, we need to talk." "About what?" About who you really are. He stepped into the room. About why a post-op nurse has level 5 security clearance. About why you've been accessing classified areas for the past 6 months. His voice went hard. About why you're investigating my officers. Emily's options evaporated. She could run, but where? The building was locked down. She could fight, but that would only make things worse. So she did the only thing left. She told the truth. Because someone in your command is selling out American soldiers, and you've been too blind to see it. The Admiral's expression didn't change. You have 30 seconds to convince me not to have you arrested for espionage. Emily met his eyes. Delta Team, Viper Squad, Shadow Unit. 3 teams, 3 ambushes, 3 sets of funerals. All in the last 6 months. All because someone leaked their positions before they deployed. She stepped closer. I'm not your enemy, Admiral. I'm trying to find the person who is. And you thought the best way to do that was to go undercover? Without authorization? Without oversight? I had authorization. You just didn't know about it. His eyes narrowed. Explain. There's a joint task force investigation into military intelligence leaks. I'm the lead field operative. My orders came from people whose clearance makes yours look like a library card. Emily pulled out her phone and showed him a document. This is my mandate, signed by the Secretary of Defense himself. The Admiral read it. His face went through several interesting color changes. One of the MPs whispered something. The Admiral nodded. Clear the room. The MPs left. The door closed. It was just the 2 of them. Why didn't you come to me directly? Because I didn't know if you were compromised. Emily pocketed her phone. For all I knew, you could be the leak. And now? Now I'm pretty sure you're just incompetent. The Admiral's jaw clenched, but he didn't take the bait. What do you have? Audio recordings, financial transactions, communication logs. Enough to prove that someone in this complex has been feeding operational intelligence to hostile forces for at least 8 months. Emily paused. And enough to prove that the leak is happening at the command level. You're saying it's one of my officers. I'm saying it's someone with access to classified briefings. Someone who knows deployment schedules before the teams do. Someone who... The lights came back on. Full power, sudden and harsh. Emily's phone buzzed. The encrypted one. She looked at the screen. The message made her stomach drop. Federal agents en route ETA 4 minutes. Is the target secured? Target? Singular. She looked at the Admiral. Who knew about this lockdown drill? What drill? This is a real security breach. No. Emily's mind was racing. It's not. Someone staged this to flush me out, which means they know I'm here, which means... The door exploded inward. Not open. Exploded. The blast knocked Emily backward. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze, she saw figures in tactical gear pouring through the doorway. Not hospital security, not military police. These were operators, real ones, the kind that didn't exist on any official roster. One of them grabbed the Admiral. Another moved toward Emily. She rolled, muscle memory overriding pain. Her hand found a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She swung it hard, connecting with the operator's knee. He went down. The room erupted into violence. The Admiral was fighting back. Good. He had training, after all. Emily grabbed the fallen operator's weapon, cleared it, and put 2 rounds into the ceiling. Federal investigation. Stand down. They didn't stand down. They adjusted their tactics. These weren't amateurs trying to kill them. These were professionals trying to extract them. Emily processed that in half a second. Extraction meant interrogation. Interrogation meant the leak would know everything she'd discovered. Everyone she'd talked to would be compromised. Marcus, Denise. Every witness she'd carefully cultivated over 6 months. Not happening. She dropped the weapon and grabbed her phone instead, hitting a preset emergency code. Then she smashed the phone against the wall. The operators paused. One of them spoke into his comm. Target destroyed the device. Moving to secure... Gunfire erupted from the hallway. Real gunfire. The federal agents had arrived early. What happened next was confusion and chaos, bodies moving, orders shouting, the distinctive crack of rifle fire in enclosed spaces. Emily grabbed the Admiral and pulled him toward the window. We're leaving. That's 3 stories. It's also not here. Choose fast. They jumped. The fall took forever and no time at all. Emily hit the ground and rolled, years of training directing her body to distribute the impact. Pain flared in her shoulder, but nothing broke. The Admiral landed harder, gasping. Security was everywhere. Marcus was being loaded into an ambulance, and standing in the middle of it all, calm as a statue, was a man in a dark suit. He looked at Emily. Agent Harper, right on time. She recognized him. SAC, Morrison from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Her handler, the man who'd sent her into this nightmare 6 months ago. We have a problem, she said. I know. They tried to kill you. Not kill, extract. Someone knows I'm investigating them, and they just played their hand. Emily looked back at the building. Smoke was pouring from the 3rd floor. Which means we're out of time, Morrison nodded. Then we move now. Federal warrant just came through. We're arresting everyone in that command briefing. Everyone? Everyone. Let the lawyers sort out who's actually guilty. He looked at the Admiral, who was being helped to his feet by MPs. That includes him. He's not the leak. How do you know? Because the leak just tried to kill both of us. Emily's voice was steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to hit. Whoever's behind this doesn't want us comparing notes. Morrison considered this. Then he spoke into his radio. All teams, converge on conference room level, detain all personnel. No exceptions. The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded Blackridge. Every exit was sealed. Everyone in the building was being questioned, photographed, and processed. It was the kind of operation that only happened when something had gone catastrophically wrong. Emily stood in the parking lot, watching her careful investigation turn into a sledgehammer. 6 months of patience, gone. But maybe that was okay. Maybe patience had run its course. Morrison appeared at her elbow. We found something in Colonel Briggs's office. Financial records he thought were encrypted. Payments from a shell corporation linked to arms dealers. He paused. It's him, Harper. Briggs is your leak. Emily felt nothing. Not triumph, not relief. Just cold certainty. Where is he? In custody. He's demanding a lawyer and claiming this is all a mistake. It's not. I know. We have enough to... Morrison's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. When? How many? He hung up. There's been an attack, coordinated strike against 3 military installations across the country, dozens dead. He looked at Emily. It's the same MO as the other ambushes. Someone leaked the security protocols. Emily's exhaustion evaporated. When did it happen? 20 minutes ago, right after we initiated the raid here. That's not possible. If Briggs is in custody, then he's not working alone. Morrison's jaw set. Or he's not the primary. The pieces rearranged themselves in Emily's mind. Briggs was dirty. The financial records proved that. But what if he was just the middleman? What if someone higher up was running the operation? She turned to Morrison. The briefing this morning, who called it? Does it matter? Who called the briefing? Morrison checked his tablet. Looks like it was Admiral Keating. Why? Emily's blood ran cold. Admiral Richard Keating. The man who'd questioned her in room 304. The man who'd claimed not to know about the lockdown. The man who'd been standing right next to her when everything went to hell. The man who'd had every opportunity to call in that extraction team. She grabbed Morrison's arm. Where's the Admiral right now? Medical processing. Why? Emily was already running. She burst through the medical tent's entrance. Nurses looked up in surprise. Where's Admiral Keating? He left 2 minutes ago. Said he needed to make an urgent call. No. Emily ran outside, scanned the parking lot. There, a black SUV pulling away from the far exit, the one that hadn't been locked down yet. She sprinted after it, knowing it was pointless. The SUV accelerated. In seconds, it would be gone. Then Marcus stepped into the road. The kid who should have been in an ambulance. The lieutenant with shrapnel wounds who could barely stand. He planted himself in the middle of the exit lane and raised his service pistol. The SUV tried to swerve. Marcus shot out the front tire. The vehicle spun, crashed into a barrier, stopped. Emergency teams were already moving. Emily reached the SUV as federal agents pulled Admiral Keating from the driver's seat. His face was calm, almost peaceful. Agent Harper, I have to admit I didn't see this coming. You tried to have me killed. Extracted. Not killed. You're more valuable alive. He smiled. At least you were. Now you're just a witness I can discredit. Morrison arrived with a team of agents. Admiral Richard Keating, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and treason. As they read him his rights, Keating looked at Emily. You know what the funny part is? I've been feeding information to foreign assets for 3 years. 3 years. And nobody noticed. Not intelligence, not the Inspector General, nobody. His smile widened. Until you. Why? Emily's voice was quiet. Money, power. The usual reasons. He shrugged. The real question is what happens now. Because even with me gone, the network I built doesn't stop. It just finds a new head. Morrison grabbed him. Get him out of here. As they led Keating away, Emily turned to Marcus. You should be in a hospital bed. Probably. He was pale, swaying on his feet. But you saved my life once. Figured I owed you. Emily caught him as his legs gave out. We're even now. Medical teams descended. Emily stepped back, watching them work. Her phone buzzed, the replacement Morrison had given her. Another encrypted message. Primary target secured, secondary targets being rounded up. Network compromised. Mission complete. Mission complete. Except it didn't feel complete. It felt like they'd cut off one head of a hydra. Keating was right about one thing. The network he'd built wouldn't just disappear because he'd been arrested. Morrison appeared beside her. We found Keating's encrypted communications. He's been running this operation for 38 months. 67 soldiers died because of intelligence he sold. He paused. You were right, Harper, about all of it. I don't feel right. You should. You just brought down a traitor who would have kept killing for years. Morrison looked at her. The director wants you back in D.C. Full debrief, then reassignment. Reassignment? You burned your cover here. Can't exactly go back to being a floor nurse after this. He smiled slightly. But there are other positions. Other investigations. Emily looked at Blackridge Medical Complex, the building where she'd spent 6 months invisible and underestimated, where she'd poured coffee for men who thought she was beneath their notice, where she'd finally proven that the quietest person in the room was often the most dangerous. What about the others? Briggs and the rest? Briggs is talking. Already gave up 3 other officers involved in the network. We're still digging, but it looks like we've got most of them. Morrison's expression hardened. They'll all face court-martial. The ones who survive trial will spend the rest of their lives in Leavenworth. Emily nodded. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough for the families of the soldiers who'd died. But it was something. There's one more thing, Morrison said. The survivor from Delta Team. He's asking to see you. Emily's heart clenched. What's his name? Sergeant David Chen. He's at Walter Reed. Says he has information about the ambush that only you need to hear. Why me? He wouldn't say. Just that it's about someone called Silent Angel. Morrison watched her face. That's you, isn't it? Your code name. It was. Harper, what aren't you telling me? Emily looked at the sky. Dawn was breaking, painting the clouds in shades of fire. Delta Team wasn't just ambushed. They were bait. Keating wanted to draw out whoever was investigating him, so he set up a mission designed to fail. He sacrificed 15 soldiers just to see who would react. And you didn't. No, I stayed quiet. I kept playing the role. Her voice cracked. 15 people died because I didn't break cover. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. If you'd broken cover, Keating would have escaped. The network would still be operational. More soldiers would have died. He put a hand on her shoulder. You made the right call. Did I? Yes, even if it doesn't feel like it. Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that her 6 months of silence, her carefully maintained invisibility, her choice to let people die while she built an airtight case, she wanted to believe it all mattered. But standing in the parking lot of a military hospital, watching federal agents arrest people who'd thought they were untouchable, all she felt was tired. When do I leave for D.C.? Tomorrow. For tonight. Get some rest. Morrison turned to go, then stopped. Harper, what you did here, going undercover without backup, building a case against people who could have killed you at any moment, that took guts. The kind of guts most agents never have. Or stupidity. Maybe both. He smiled. Either way, you got results. That's what matters. He walked away. Emily stood alone in the parking lot, watching the sun climb higher. Around her, the cleanup continued. Evidence being tagged, witnesses being interviewed, the machinery of justice grinding forward. Her phone buzzed one more time. Not an encrypted message. A text from Denise. "Are you okay? They won't tell us anything except that there's been an arrest. Please tell me you're safe." Emily stared at the message. Safe. What a relative term. She was physically unharmed. She'd completed her mission. She'd brought down a traitor and dismantled a spy network. By any objective measure, she was fine. But she could still see Marcus's face when he'd told her about Delta Team. She could still hear the names of the soldiers who'd died while she'd stood silent and gathered evidence. She could still feel the weight of every conversation she'd overheard, every secret she'd kept, every moment she'd chosen investigation over intervention. She typed back, "I'm safe. I'll explain everything later." Then she deleted the message and turned off her phone. The sun was fully up now, bright and unforgiving. Emily walked back toward the medical complex, past the federal agents and the barricades and the news crews that were starting to arrive. She walked through the lobby where she'd pushed a T-card 1,000 times. She took the stairs to the third floor, to the hallway where she'd smiled and nodded and been invisible. Room 3. 04's door was still broken. The window was still open. Blood still marked the sheets where Marcus had been. Emily stood in the doorway and wondered what came next. The answer arrived in the form of Morrison's voice on the building's PA system. "All personnel report to the main auditorium for mandatory briefing. I repeat, all personnel to the main auditorium." Emily walked slowly toward the auditorium. Other staff members were emerging from rooms and offices, confused and frightened. They looked at her like she might have answers. She had answers. She just wasn't sure they'd want to hear them. The auditorium was packed. Nurses, doctors, administrators, security personnel, everyone who worked at Blackridge was crammed into seats designed for half their number. Morrison stood on stage with a dozen federal agents behind him. "I know you all have questions," he began. "I'm going to answer them as directly as I can. This morning, federal agents arrested Admiral Richard Keating and several other officers stationed at this facility. They've been charged with espionage, conspiracy, and treason." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone near Emily started crying. Morrison continued, "For the past 6 months, a covert investigation has been underway to identify a security leak that resulted in the deaths of multiple U.S. service members. That investigation was successful. The individuals responsible are now in custody." Denise stood up. "Who was investigating? Why weren't we told?" Morrison's eyes found Emily in the crowd. "Because the investigation required a deep cover operative. Someone who could observe the command structure without being noticed. Someone who... It was me." The words left Emily's mouth before she could stop them. Every head turned. She stood up. "I've been working undercover for the Defense Intelligence Agency. My assignment was to identify and gather evidence against the person or persons leaking classified information. That investigation is now complete." The silence in the auditorium was absolute. Denise's voice cut through it, sharp as a scalpel. "You've been lying to us for 6 months?" "Yes. We trusted you." "I know. People died while you were playing spy." Emily met her eyes. "People died because someone was selling them out. I was trying to find out who. And I did." Another nurse stood, Christina, one of the night shift supervisors. "How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know you're not the traitor?" Morrison stepped forward. "Because if Agent Harper were compromised, none of you would be alive right now. She had access to every classified file in this complex. She could have sold information worth millions. Instead, she built a case that will put genuine traitors in prison for the rest of their lives." "She still lied to us," Denise said quietly. "Yes," Emily agreed. "I did, and I do it again." The auditorium erupted. Voices shouting, accusations flying, the careful order of military discipline fracturing under the weight of betrayal and confusion. Morrison tried to restore calm. "Everyone needs to..." The building shook. Not an earthquake, an explosion, somewhere close. The lights flickered. Emergency alarms started screaming again. Morrison was on his radio immediately. "Report. What's happening?" The response came back crackling with static. "Explosive device in the parking garage. Unknown casualties. Fire spreading to..." The transmission cut off. People were panicking now, pushing toward the exits. Morrison's agents tried to maintain order, but there were too many people and not enough agents. Emily stayed rooted. Something was wrong. This wasn't random. This was... Her new phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Keating's voice came through crystal clear. "Hello, Agent Harper. Enjoying the show?" Her blood turned to ice. "You're in custody." "My body is. My plan isn't." He sounded almost cheerful. "You thought you'd won. You thought arresting me would end this. But I told you, the network doesn't stop just because one person gets caught." "What did you do?" "I activated a contingency. Right now, every piece of evidence you collected over the past 6 months is being destroyed. Every file, every recording, every witness," he paused, "including you." The line went dead. Emily looked at Morrison. He was still on his radio trying to coordinate the evacuation. She grabbed his arm. "It's not just the parking garage. There are more bombs." "How do you know?" "Because Keating just called me." Morrison's face went white. He screamed into his radio. "Sweep the entire building. I want every room checked for explosives. Full evacuation protocol now." But it was too late. The second explosion tore through the east wing. Emily felt it more than heard it, a pressure wave that knocked people off their feet. The ceiling cracked. Dust rained down. Through the chaos and the screaming, Emily heard a sound that made her heart stop. The fire alarm on the floor above them. The floor where all the post-op patients were recovering, where Marcus was. She ran. Morrison shouted after her, but she didn't stop. The stairwell was filling with smoke. She pulled her shirt over her mouth and climbed. Second floor, clear. Third floor, the hallway was an inferno. Flames crawled up the walls like living things. The smoke was so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead, but she knew this hallway. She'd walked it 1,000 times. Room 304 was at the end. Emily ran through fire. The heat hit her like a wall. Emily's lungs screamed for clean air but found only smoke. She dropped low, crawling where the oxygen still lived, counting doors through the haze. First room, empty. Second, a nurse helping an elderly patient toward the stairwell. Third, the door to 304 hung crooked on its hinges, flames licking the frame. Emily kicked it open. Marcus was on the floor, trying to drag himself toward the window with one arm. His IV stand had toppled across his legs. Blood soaked through his bandages where the shrapnel wounds had reopened. "You're insane," he gasped when he saw her. "The whole floor's coming down." "Then we better move fast." Emily grabbed him under the arms and hauled. He wasn't heavy, but dead weight is dead weight. The IV stand clattered aside. She got him upright, his arm across her shoulders. "Can you walk?" "Can I what?" "Walk, run, crawl. Pick one." They stumbled into the hallway. The smoke was thicker now, black and toxic. Emily's eyes streamed. Behind them, something in 304 exploded. Probably oxygen tanks. The pressure waves shoved them forward. The stairwell was 20 feet away. It might as well have been 20 miles. Emily's foot caught on debris. They went down hard. Marcus cried out as he landed on his injured side. Emily tasted blood. She'd bitten her tongue. "Leave me." Marcus's voice was barely audible. "Get yourself out." "Shut up." "Harper, I'm serious. I said shut up." She grabbed his shirt and pulled. "I didn't spend 6 months building a case just to watch you die in a fire." "Why do you care?" "Because you're the only person in this whole damn building who saw me." Emily's voice cracked. "You asked me who I really was. You didn't just look through me like furniture." The ceiling groaned. A section of it collapsed 10 feet to their left, showering sparks. Emily got Marcus moving again. 5 feet to the stairwell. 4. 3. The door burst open from the other side. Federal agents in fire gear poured through, one of them grabbing Marcus, another pulling Emily toward the stairs. She let herself be carried, her legs suddenly refusing to work. The descent was chaos. People everywhere, smoke filling the stairwell, the walls hot enough to burn if you touched them. Emily counted floors. 3, 2, 1. Ground level. The lobby was a war zone of broken glass and panicked evacuation. They burst outside into air that tasted like heaven. Paramedics descended immediately. Someone wrapped a blanket around Emily's shoulders. Someone else was shouting orders about triage and transport. Emily pulled away from the medic, trying to examine her. "Morrison, where's Morrison?" Ma'am, you need to sit down. Where is he? A hand on her shoulder. She spun, fist coming up automatically. Morrison caught her wrist. Easy. I'm right here. Keating, he said he's destroying everything, all the evidence. I know. We lost the server room in the first blast. Everything stored locally is gone. Morrison's face was grim. But the recordings you made weren't just stored here. We've been backing everything up to an off-site secure facility in real time. Emily's knees went weak. You didn't tell me. Protocol. The fewer people who know where evidence is stored, the harder it is to destroy. He guided her to sit on the bumper of an ambulance. We've still got it all, Harper. Every conversation, every document, every piece of financial data. Keating's contingency just destroyed a bunch of duplicates. Then why blow up the building? Because he's not trying to destroy evidence anymore. Morrison looked at the burning hospital. He's trying to kill witnesses. The word settled over Emily like ice water. She looked around at the chaos. Injured staff being loaded into ambulances, firefighters battling the blaze, federal agents trying to maintain some kind of order. How many people knew pieces of what she'd discovered? Denise, who'd noticed her going into restricted areas. Christina, who'd processed her security clearances. Marcus, who'd asked the right questions. Keating wasn't just burning files, he was burning loose ends. We need to get everyone who worked with me into protective custody, Emily said. Now. Morrison was already on his radio. All personnel who had direct contact with Agent Harper. I need names and locations immediately. The response came back fragmented, multiple voices talking over each other. Morrison's expression darkened with each report. How many are unaccounted for? Emily couldn't hear the answer, but she saw it in his face. Get search and rescue focusing on those areas, Morrison ordered, and someone get me a current headcount of everyone who made it out. A junior agent ran up, tablet in hand. Sir, we've got a problem. The explosion in the parking garage. It wasn't just random placement. It took out 3 specific vehicles. Whose? The agent checked his screen. Nurse Supervisor Kowalski, Security Chief Ramos, and Medical Administrator Chen. Emily's stomach dropped. Are they? Kowalski and Ramos were inside the building when it happened. But Chen, the agent swallowed. Chen was in the parking garage. We found remains, but we can't confirm identity yet. Morrison's jaw clenched. Chen was scheduled to testify next week about security procedures. He was going to explain how someone with Keating's clearance could have accessed operational data without triggering alerts. It wasn't random, Emily said quietly. None of this is random. Keating knew exactly who could hurt him, and he's eliminating them systematically. Then we need to... A boom echoed across the complex. Not an explosion this time, the sound of something structural giving way. The east wing of Blackridge folded in on itself like a house of cards, floors pancaking down in a cloud of dust and debris. Someone screamed. Several someones. Emily watched the building where she'd worked for 6 months collapse into rubble and felt nothing. Just cold calculation. How many people had still been inside? How many witnesses had Keating just silenced? Morrison's radio exploded with frantic voices. He was trying to coordinate, trying to bring order to chaos, but Emily could see the reality setting in. They'd won the investigation, but Keating was winning the war. Her replacement phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You cost me my career, I'm costing you everyone you've talked to. Fair trade. Emily showed Morrison. He read it, and his face went white. Trace that number. He's using a burner. Probably already destroyed it. Emily stood up, ignoring the protests from the medic. We need to flip this. What? He's playing defense, trying to eliminate witnesses before they can testify. That means he's scared. That means we can use it. Emily's mind was racing. Where are they holding him? Federal detention facility downtown. Maximum security. He's not getting out, Harper. That's not what I'm worried about. Emily grabbed Morrison's tablet and pulled up the detention center's layout. He made this call from inside custody, which means he still has access to communications. That's impossible. We stripped him of everything. Phone, watch, even his belt. Then someone's helping him. Emily zoomed in on the facility's staffing roster. Who's processing his intake? Morrison checked. Deputy Marshal Carson Grant, 15 years with the service, impeccable record. Run his financials anyway. Harper, you can't just accuse run his financials. Morrison made the call. While they waited, Emily watched the firefighters battle the blaze. It was contained now, but the damage was catastrophic. Black Ridge Military Medical Complex, a facility that had stood for 30 years, was gone. Morrison's phone rang. He listened, and Emily watched the blood drain from his face. When? Pause. How much? Another pause. Send everything you've got to my secure terminal. He hung up. Deputy Marshal Carson Grant received 2 wire transfers in the past 72 hours, total of $300,000. The money came from the same shell corporation that was paying Briggs. Emily felt the pieces clicking together. Grant gave Keating access to a phone. Keating made his calls, triggered the contingency plan, and now Grant's probably destroying evidence of the communication. If Grant's dirty, then Keating could walk out of that facility whenever he wants. No. Emily was already moving toward Morrison's SUV. He won't run. Running means he loses. He's going to try to finish this. Finish what? Eliminating everyone who can testify against him. Emily opened the passenger door. Starting with me. Morrison stared at her. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to end this before anyone else dies. That's insane. If Keating gets to you, he won't. Because you're going to have a tactical team ready to move the second he makes contact. Emily met his eyes. This is the play, Morrison. Let him think he's hunting me. Let him get close. Then we take him down for good. Morrison's radio crackled. Sir, we've got confirmation. Marshal Grant just left the detention facility off shift. He's not responding to recall orders. There's your answer, Emily said. Grant's running, which means Keating gave him instructions. Probably to set up the hit on me. Morrison made a decision. Get in. But we do this my way. Full surveillance, tactical support, and the second things go sideways, you're out. Emily climbed into the SUV. Where are we going? Safe house. Fortified position where we can control the environment. Morrison started driving. If Keating wants you dead, he'll have to come through a dozen federal agents to do it. They drove in silence through streets clogged with emergency vehicles. Every news channel was covering the Black Ridge explosion. The official story was a gas leak, but Emily could see reporters already asking questions about the federal presence and the arrests. By tonight, the truth would be leaking. By tomorrow, it would be everywhere. Morrison's phone rang again. He put it on speaker. What? Sir, we've got a situation at Walter Reed. It was the junior agent from earlier, his voice tight. The Delta team survivor, Sergeant David Klein, someone just tried to access his room. Security stopped them, but the individual escaped. Emily's hands clenched. Description? Male, 6'2", wearing hospital scrubs. He had a syringe filled with something our guys are testing now. It's not Keating, Morrison said. He's still in custody. No, but it's someone from his network. Emily's mind was racing. Klein was going to tell me something about the ambush. Something important enough that Keating wants him silenced. Morrison changed direction, tires squealing. We're going to Walter Reed. Get Klein into protective custody and double his security detail. The drive to Walter Reed took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. Emily's thoughts spiraled. How many people were in Keating's network? How deep did the corruption go? She'd thought bringing down the Admiral would end it, but instead she'd just kicked over a rock and watched dozens of poisonous things scatter. Walter Reed Medical Center loomed ahead, its white towers stark against the darkening sky. Morrison pulled into the emergency entrance, flashing his credentials at security. They ran inside, taking the stairs because elevators were death traps when someone was hunting you. Klein's room was on the 4th floor, surrounded by federal agents and military police. Morrison showed his ID. Status? Secure, sir. The subject is inside with 2 guards. No one's getting through. Morrison nodded. Harper, you ready? Emily took a breath. Let's hear what he has to say. They entered the room. Sergeant David Klein looked worse than Emily had imagined, burns covering half his face, his right arm in a cast, bandages visible under his hospital gown, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Agent Harper. His voice was rough, damaged by smoke inhalation. They told me you were the one investigating. They told me you were Silent Angel. That's right. Then you need to know something about the Delta Team ambush. Klein's good hand clenched the bedsheet. We weren't just betrayed, we were sacrificed. Emily pulled up a chair. Explain. The mission brief we got was wrong from the start. We were told to secure a compound 15 clicks outside Kabul. Standard raid in and out, minimal resistance expected. Klein's jaw tightened. But when we got there, it wasn't minimal resistance. It was a full battalion waiting for us. They knew our approach vectors. They knew our comm frequencies. They knew everything. Morrison leaned forward. Someone leaked your operational details. Yeah, but it's worse than that. Because halfway through the ambush, I managed to get a message out to command. I told them we were pinned down, taking heavy casualties, needed immediate air support. Klein's eyes went distant. You know what command said? They said to hold position and wait for extraction. No air support, no reinforcements, just hold position. Emily felt sick. They left you there to die. Not just die. They were using us to test enemy response times, to see how quickly hostile forces could mobilize. We were bait for a bigger operation that was supposed to happen 3 days later. Klein's voice broke. 15 soldiers died so command could gather tactical data. Morrison was on his phone immediately, pulling records. Emily sat frozen, the implications crashing over her like waves. Keating hadn't just leaked information, he'd weaponized American soldiers, used them as pawns in some larger strategic game. Who gave that order? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. Who told you to hold position? Klein met her eyes. The voice on the radio was Admiral Keating. I'd recognize it anywhere. The room went silent except for the beeping of Klein's monitors. Morrison looked up from his phone. I'm seeing the operational records now. Klein's right. There was a secondary operation planned for 3 days later. Large-scale assault on a suspected terrorist cell. It used intelligence gathered during the Delta Team engagement. Engagement, Klein laughed bitterly. That's what they're calling a massacre now? Emily's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She answered without thinking. What? Agent Harper, having fun chasing shadows? It was Keating, but his voice sounded different, strained, urgent. Because while you're playing protector, my friends are paying visits to everyone on my list. What list? Every person who helped you. Every witness who could testify. Your supervisor Kowalski is already dead. They found her body in the rubble 20 minutes ago. Security Chief Ramos is missing. And I'm looking at surveillance footage of Marshal Grant walking into your handler's apartment building right now. Emily's blood turned to ice. Morrison. But Morrison was already moving, screaming into his radio. All units, we have a credible threat against federal personnel. I need immediate response to... He rattled off his home address. Keating's voice continued in Emily's ear. You thought you were so clever, going undercover, building your case, bringing me down, but you forgot the most important rule. What's that? The game doesn't end when one player falls, it just gets more interesting. The line went dead. Morrison's radio erupted with cross-traffic. Units responding to the address. ETA, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Emily pulled up a mental map of D.C. Morrison's apartment was in Georgetown, 12 minutes away, even with lights and sirens. If Grant was already inside... Does your wife know? Emily asked quietly. Morrison's face went white. She's at a conference in Baltimore. She won't be home until tomorrow. Then who? My daughter, Rachel. She's home from college for the weekend. Morrison's hand shook as he grabbed his keys. I told her to stay there while I dealt with this. I thought she'd be safe. They ran. The drive to Georgetown was a blur of red lights and near collisions. Morrison drove like a man possessed, the SUV's engine screaming. Emily was on her phone, trying to coordinate with the tactical teams responding to Morrison's address. This is my fault, Morrison said, his voice hollow. I brought you into this. I approved the investigation, and now she's going to be fine. Emily didn't know if she believed it, but she said it anyway. Grant doesn't know we're on to him. He thinks he has time. How do you know? Because Keating's playing psychological warfare. He wants us panicked and making mistakes, which means we do the opposite. We stay calm and we end this. Morrison's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. If anything happens to her, it won't. They screeched to a stop in front of a brownstone apartment building. Tactical teams were already deployed, black SUVs blocking both ends of the street. An agent ran up to Morrison's window. Sir, we've secured the perimeter. No one's come out since we arrived. Have you made contact with anyone inside? Negative. We tried calling the apartment, but no answer. Morrison was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped. Emily followed, her hand instinctively going to her waist where a weapon should have been. She had nothing, no gun, no vest, no tactical training in months. Just 6 months of playing nurse and a bone-deep need to fix what she'd broken. The building's lobby was empty. Morrison headed for the stairs. Elevators were still death traps. 3rd floor. Emily's legs burned. Morrison didn't slow down. His apartment was at the end of the hall. The door was closed but not locked. Morrison pushed it open slowly. "Rachel?" His voice cracked. "Rachel, honey, it's Dad. I need you to answer me." Silence. They entered. The apartment was neat, lived in. Family photos on the walls, backpack by the door, Rachel's probably. The TV was on, some sitcom playing to an empty room. Morrison moved through the space like a ghost, checking rooms. Kitchen clear, living room clear, Rachel's room. He stopped. Emily came up behind him and saw what had frozen him in place. Rachel's bedroom was empty, but the window was open. A rope made of tied-together bed sheets hung from the sill, disappearing into the alley below. She ran. Emily felt relief flood through her. Smart kid. She heard something and got out. Morrison was already at the window, looking down. The rope's still swinging. She can't have gone far. They ran back down the stairs, out into the alley. The bedsheet rope ended 6 feet above the pavement. Fresh scuff marks showed where someone had dropped and landed. "There," Emily pointed. Blood drops on the concrete, leading away from the building. "She's hurt." Morrison followed the trail, Emily right behind him. The blood led them through the alley, around a dumpster, and then a figure stepped out from behind a parked car. Marshal Carson Grant, still in his deputy uniform, holding a gun to the head of a terrified college-aged girl with her father's eyes. "Stop right there." Grant's voice was steady. "Or I paint the wall with her brains." Morrison froze. Emily could see him calculating angles, distances, odds, all of them bad. "Let her go," Morrison said. "This is between us. She's not part of this. She became part of this when her daddy decided to investigate the wrong people." Grant pulled Rachel closer. She whimpered. "Now here's what's going to happen. Agent Harper is going to walk over here slowly. Then you're going to watch while I put a bullet in both of them. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing you got them killed." Emily stepped forward. "Or we could talk about a deal." "What deal?" "You give us Rachel. We give you a head start. 10 minutes before we call it in. That's more than enough time for someone like you to disappear." Grant laughed. "You think I'm stupid? The second I let her go, your tactical teams move in, and I'm done." "You're already done." Emily took another step. "Keating's in custody. The network's burned. Every asset he had is being rounded up right now. You can run, but you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." She stopped 10 feet away. "Or you can let the girl go and make a deal. Testify against Keating, give us everyone in the network, and maybe you see daylight again before you're 80. Why would I trust you? Because I kept my cover for 6 months. I watched people die, and I didn't break. You think I won't keep my word about a deal?" Emily met his eyes. "I'm the most honest person in this whole mess. I'm also your only chance at staying alive." Grant's gun wavered slightly. Emily could see him thinking it through, weighing his options. Then Rachel moved. It wasn't much, just a sharp elbow back into Grant's ribs. But it was enough. His grip loosened for half a second. Morrison lunged forward. Emily dove for Rachel, pulling her down and away. Grant's gun went off. The bullet went wide, punching through a car window. Morrison hit Grant like a linebacker, both of them going down hard. The gun clattered away. Emily covered Rachel with her body, feeling the girl sob against her shoulder. Tactical teams poured into the alley, weapons drawn. They pulled Morrison off Grant, cuffed the marshal, and secured the scene in 30 seconds of controlled chaos. Emily helped Rachel to her feet. The girl was shaking, blood running from a cut on her arm where she'd scraped it climbing out the window. "Is it over?" "Almost," Emily said softly. "Almost." Morrison pulled his daughter into a crushing hug. Over her shoulder, he met Emily's eyes. The gratitude there was overwhelming. But Emily felt no triumph, just exhaustion and the creeping certainty that they still hadn't hit bottom. Keating had activated his network. How many more Grants were out there? How many more threats were crawling out of the woodwork? Her phone rang again, same unknown number pattern. "I'm impressed," Keating said when she answered. Grant was supposed to be one of my best. But you talked him down like a jumper on a ledge. What do you want? I want you to understand something, Agent Harper. This isn't about winning anymore. This is about making sure that if I go down, I take everyone with me. His voice went cold. Check your email. I just sent you something interesting. Emily pulled up her secure email on her phone. A new message from an encrypted address. No subject line, just an attachment, a video file. She opened it. The video showed a large warehouse, dimly lit. In the center of the frame, bound to chairs, were 4 people Emily recognized immediately. Denise Kowalski, alive, not dead like Keating had claimed. Security Chief Ramos. Medical Administrator Chen, also alive. And Christina, the night shift supervisor who'd questioned Emily in the auditorium. All of them gagged, all of them terrified. Keating's voice continued on the phone. I lied about Kowalski being dead, wanted to see how you'd react. But now I've got leverage. 4 witnesses who can testify against me, all in one convenient location. A pause. You have 2 hours to come alone to the address I'm about to send you. If you bring backup, they die. If you're late, they die. If you do anything except exactly what I tell you, they die. I get it. Emily's voice was flat. What's to stop you from killing them anyway? Nothing. But if you don't come, they definitely die. If you do come, maybe I'll feel generous. He laughed. 2 hours, Harper. Clock's ticking. The call ended. A text message arrived. Coordinates to a location in an industrial area near the docks. Morrison was watching her. What did he say? Emily showed him the video and the coordinates. His face went hard. It's a trap, obviously. So we go in with everything we have, tactical teams, air support, the works, and he kills the hostages the second he sees a helicopter. Emily pocketed her phone. No, I go in alone. Harper, that's suicide. It's the only play we have. Emily looked at Rachel, still shaking in her father's arms. You got your daughter back. Those 4 people deserve the same chance. I can't authorize this. I'm not asking for authorization. Emily started walking toward the street. I'm telling you what I'm doing. You can either help me or get out of my way. Morrison caught up to her. You know he's going to kill you. The second you walk in there, you're dead. Maybe. There's no maybe about it. Keating's cornered and desperate. He's going to take you down and laugh while he does it. Emily stopped. Those 4 people are alive because of my investigation. Kowalski covered for me when I needed access to restricted areas. Ramos bent security protocols so I could move around unnoticed. Chen processed my clearances without asking questions. Christina, her voice caught. Christina trusted me even when she shouldn't have. They all helped me build this case and now they're going to die for it unless I do something. So we do something smart. We plan an extraction, we coordinate with... There's no time. Emily's control finally cracked. You heard him, 2 hours. By the time we plan anything, they'll be dead. So I go in now, I buy time, and I hope to hell you can figure out a way to get us all out alive. Morrison stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. I need a tactical team mobilized to the following coordinates. Covert deployment only, nothing that can be spotted from the ground. He rattled off the address Keating had sent. And get me aerial surveillance of the area. I want to know every entrance, every exit, every window. He hung up and looked at Emily. You've got 90 minutes to keep those people alive. After that, we're coming in whether Keating likes it or not. 90 minutes. Emily felt the weight of it. I can work with that. Harper? Morrison's voice stopped her. Don't do anything stupid in there. Too late for that. Emily managed to smile. I've been doing stupid things for 6 months. She got into Morrison's SUV and drove toward the docks, watching the city lights blur past. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this was probably the last drive she'd ever take. Keating wasn't bluffing. He had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by making her death as painful as possible. But Emily had spent 6 months being invisible. 6 months being underestimated. 6 months watching and waiting and building a case that no one thought a simple nurse could build. If this was her last play, she was going to make it count. The warehouse district appeared ahead, dark and abandoned. Emily checked the coordinates one more time. Building 7, Pier 23. She could see it now. A massive structure of corrugated metal and broken windows, surrounded by empty lots and rusting equipment. She parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance. The wind off the water was cold, carrying the smell of salt and diesel. Her footsteps echoed on the broken pavement. The warehouse's main door was open. Emily stepped inside. The space was enormous, filled with shadows, and the skeletal remains of industrial equipment. Keating's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness. "Right on time, Agent Harper. I appreciate punctuality." Emily didn't answer. She moved slowly forward, eyes adjusting to the dim light. She could see the 4 hostages now, exactly where they'd been in the video. Still bound, still gagged, still alive. Denise saw her and started struggling against her restraints. Emily shook her head slightly. "Stay still. Stay calm." Keating stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He wasn't in uniform anymore, just slacks and a shirt, like someone heading to the office. In his hand was a pistol pointed casually at Emily's chest. "You came alone. I'm touched. Let them go. Eventually. First, we need to talk about how this ends." Keating smiled. "See, I've had time to think while sitting in that cell. And I realized something. You can't let me live." "That's up to a jury. Is it? Because even if I go to trial, even if I'm convicted, I still have information. I still have leverage. I can make deals, flip on people, trade testimony for reduced sentences. As long as I'm alive, I'm dangerous." He raised the gun. "So you're here to make sure I don't make it to trial. Aren't you, Agent Harper?" Emily said nothing. Keating laughed. "That's what I thought. The righteous federal agent, willing to get her hands dirty for the greater good." "Well, here's your chance." He tossed her a gun. It clattered to the floor at her feet. "Pick it up. Shoot me. Save your witnesses and eliminate the threat in one clean move." Emily looked at the gun, then at the hostages, then at Keating. "That's the deal?" she asked quietly. "I execute you and they go free?" "Scout's honor." Emily picked up the gun. It was heavy, familiar. She checked the chamber, fully loaded. Her hand remembered the weight, the balance. Muscle memory from another life. She raised it and pointed it at Keating's chest. "Do it," he said. "Pull the trigger. End this." Emily's finger touched the trigger. One squeeze. That's all it would take. One bullet, and Admiral Richard Keating would never hurt anyone again. Never leak another secret. Never sacrifice another soldier. Behind Keating, in the shadows, she saw movement. Not tactical teams, not Morrison. More men, 6 of them, armed, moving into position. Emily lowered the gun. "Nice try." Keating's smile widened. "What gave it away?" "You wouldn't give up that easily, and you definitely wouldn't hand me a loaded weapon." Emily set the gun on the floor. "So what's the real play here?" "The real play is this." Keating gestured, and his men stepped forward into the light. "I record you executing an unarmed prisoner. Then I use that recording to destroy your credibility, get every piece of evidence you collected thrown out of court, and walk away from this whole mess clean. Except I didn't shoot you. Yet." Keating picked up the gun Emily had set down. "But you will. Because if you don't, my men are going to start killing your witnesses. 1 every 60 seconds until you pull the trigger." He aimed his gun at Denise. "Your choice, Agent Harper. Murder me and save them, or watch them die knowing you could have prevented it." Emily looked at the 4 terrified faces, at Keating's cold smile, at the 6 armed men surrounding them. She looked at her watch. 73 minutes since Morrison's 90-minute deadline. 17 minutes until tactical teams breached the building. 17 minutes to keep 5 people alive. Emily took a breath and said the only thing she could say. "Okay, I'll do it." She picked up the gun Keating had given her, raised it, pointed it at his chest, and squeezed the trigger. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. Keating's laugh filled the warehouse. "Did you really think I'd give you a loaded weapon, Harper? I'm disappointed. I thought you were smarter than that." He raised his own gun, the real one, and pointed it at Emily's head. "But you tried. You were willing to execute me to save them, and that's all I needed to see." The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Emily felt the impact but no pain. That was strange. Shouldn't being shot hurt? Then she realized Keating had missed. No, not missed. He'd fired over her shoulder. She turned. One of his own men was on the ground, a hole in his chest. Keating's voice changed, became harder. I hate working with amateurs. Did you really think you could record me and sell it to the highest bidder? He shot another one of his men. I've been 3 steps ahead of everyone in this entire operation. Did you think I wouldn't notice when my own people tried to double-cross me? The remaining 4 men scattered, diving for cover. Keating kept firing, methodical and precise. Another man went down. Then another. Emily used the chaos to move. She ran toward the hostages, yanking at Denise's restraints. The knots were tight, but not impossible. "Behind you!" Denise's muffled shout came through the gag. Emily turned just as one of Keating's surviving men aimed at her. She had no weapon, no cover, no options. The warehouse's side door exploded inward. Tactical teams poured through in a wave of black armor and shouted commands. Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" Everything happened fast. The surviving men from Keating's crew tried to fight, tried to run. Didn't matter. Tactical teams dropped them with precise shots. 20 seconds and it was over. 4 bodies on the ground, smoke in the air, and Keating standing alone in the center of it all. He still had his gun. Still had 1 bullet left. He pointed it at Emily. Morrison's team had him surrounded, dozens of weapons trained on him. But everyone knew he could pull the trigger faster than they could drop him. "Here we are," Keating said softly. "Full circle. You in front of me, unarmed and helpless. Just like you were in that conference room 6 months ago." "Not helpless," Emily said. "Never helpless." "No?" He stepped closer. "Then what are you going to do? You can't shoot me. You can't run. You can't save everyone." His finger tightened on the trigger. "You're going to die knowing you failed." Emily looked him in the eyes. "I didn't fail. I exposed you. I dismantled your network. I got justice for Delta Team and every other soldier you sacrificed. That's not failure. That's victory." "Victory," Keating laughed. "You want to know what victory looks like? It looks like this." He swung the gun away from Emily and put it under his own chin. "No!" Morrison shouted, but Emily just watched. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Keating's finger froze on the trigger. His hand shook. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He couldn't do it. "You won't pull that trigger," Emily said quietly, "because at the end of the day, you're a coward. You sacrificed soldiers rather than risk yourself. You killed witnesses rather than face justice. And now, when it's finally your turn to pay the price, you can't even do that." Keating's gun hand wavered. "You wanted to know who I really am?" Emily stepped closer. "I'm the person you made when you killed those 15 soldiers. I'm the reason you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell. I'm the last thing you'll think about every night before you sleep and every morning when you wake up." The gun fell from Keating's hand. He dropped to his knees. "I'm your consequences," Emily whispered. Tactical teams moved in, cuffing Keating, reading him his rights. Morrison was freeing the hostages, calling for medics. Everything was motion and noise and the messy aftermath of violence. Emily stood perfectly still in the center of the warehouse and felt absolutely nothing. Then Denise's arms were around her, and Christina was crying, and Ramos was shaking her hand, and Medical Administrator Chen was thanking her in a voice thick with emotion. Morrison appeared at her elbow. 17 minutes early. I'm impressed. I counted on you being early, too. How'd you know I would be? Because you're a father. You know what it's like to almost lose someone. Emily looked at the freed hostages. You wouldn't risk them any longer than you had to. Morrison nodded. Federal prosecutors want you in D.C. tomorrow for the full debrief. This is going to be the biggest military corruption case in decades. What about Keating? Maximum security, solitary confinement, 24-hour surveillance. He's never seen daylight again. Morrison paused, and Grant started talking. He's giving up everyone in the network. We're going to be making arrests for months. Emily should have felt satisfaction, relief, something. Instead, she just felt tired. Harper, Morrison's voice was gentle. You did good work here. Better than good. You saved lives. I know. Then why do you look like you lost? Emily watched Keating being led away in handcuffs. Because I spent 6 months watching people die while I built a case. I chose investigation over intervention, and I'll never know if I made the right call. You did. Did I? Or did I just get lucky that it worked out? She turned to Morrison. What if Grant had gotten to your daughter? What if Keating's contingency had worked? Would it still be the right call then? Morrison had no answer. They stood in silence as emergency crews swarmed the warehouse. Medics were checking the hostages. Crime scene investigators were photographing evidence. The machinery of justice grinding forward. Emily's phone buzzed. Not the replacement phone, her original one, recovered from the wreckage of Blackridge. Someone had found it and sent it to her. One missed call. One voicemail. From a number she didn't recognize. She listened to the message. A man's voice, rough and broken. Agent Harper, my name is Sergeant First Class David Klein. They told me you're the one investigating what happened to Delta Team. There's something you need to know, something that goes deeper than Keating. Meet me at Walter Reed, room 418, come alone. And Agent Harper, trust no one. Not Morrison, not the DIA, no one. Because what I'm about to tell you proves that everyone involved in this investigation has been compromised from the beginning. The message ended. Emily looked at the timestamp. Klein had left that message 6 hours ago, before the explosion at Blackridge, before the standoff with Grant, before everything had gone to hell. She looked at Morrison, who was coordinating with his teams. She looked at the tactical agents who'd saved her life. She looked at Keating, being loaded into an armored transport. Trust no one. Emily deleted the voicemail. Then she walked out of the warehouse, into the cold night air, and wondered if she'd just made another terrible mistake. The cab dropped Emily 3 blocks from Walter Reed. She paid cash and walked the rest of the way, staying in the shadows between streetlights. 2 in the morning, and the city felt like it was holding its breath. Trust no one. Klein's words circled in her head like vultures. She'd deleted the voicemail but couldn't delete the questions it raised. If everyone was compromised, then who'd really been running her investigation? Morrison seemed clean, but so had Keating until the evidence proved otherwise. Walter Reed's emergency entrance glowed ahead. Emily pulled her jacket tighter and walked through the automatic doors like she belonged there. Night shift security barely glanced up. Just another medical professional coming in for a late shift. The elevator took forever. Emily counted her heartbeats. 87 by the time the doors opened on the 4th floor. Room 418 was at the end of a quiet hallway, flanked by 2 federal agents who straightened when they saw her approaching. Agent Harper. The taller one checked his tablet. We weren't notified you'd be visiting. Last-minute decision. How's the patient? Stable? Asking for you, actually. Emily showed her credentials. The agent scanned them and nodded. 5 minutes. The door clicked shut behind her. Klein looked worse than he had in her imagination. More bandages, more machines, more of the hollow look that came from staring at death and somehow walking away. But his eyes were sharp when they found hers. You got my message. 6 hours late. Emily pulled a chair close. What couldn't wait? Klein glanced at the door. The walls have ears. This room is monitored, video, audio, everything, but I needed you to see something. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Physical therapist who worked at Blackridge remembered something strange from the week before the ambush. Emily unfolded it. A photocopy of a medical requisition form. Standard vaccination authorization for Delta Team. Signed and dated 1 week before the mission that killed them. I don't understand. Vaccinations are routine. Look at the signature. Klein's voice was barely audible. Emily looked. The authorizing physician was Dr. Sarah Vance, Chief Medical Officer at Blackridge. Emily knew that signature. She'd seen it dozens of times. But something was off. The loops were too tight, the spacing wrong. It's forged, Emily said quietly. Yeah, which means someone wanted Delta Team to think they were getting vaccinations when they were actually getting something else. Klein's jaw clenched. 3 members reported feeling sick 2 days before deployment. Flu-like symptoms, fever, disorientation, slowed reflexes. Command cleared them anyway. Emily's blood went cold. Someone drugged them, sabotaged them. I've been pulling medical records for weeks. Every soldier who died in those ambushes had a medical interaction at Blackridge within 72 hours of deployment. Vaccinations, blood draws, routine checkups, all signed off by Dr. Vance. Vance is dead. She died in the Blackridge explosion. Convenient. Klein's expression was hard. Or maybe someone made sure she couldn't answer questions. Emily stood up, pacing. The pieces were rearranging, forming a picture she didn't want to see. If Vance was involved, then this goes deeper than Keating. He was feeding intelligence, but someone was also physically compromising the soldiers. Two separate operations working in parallel. One leak, one sabotage. Both targeting the same units. Klein pulled out another paper, torn from a notebook. I started mapping it. Every compromised mission, every casualty, every medical interaction. There's a pattern. Emily took it. Klein had drawn a timeline with names and dates. Delta Team, Viper Squad, Shadow Unit. All 3 units had received medical attention at Black Ridge within 3 days of deployment. All 3 had members reporting symptoms. All 3 annihilated. How many people had access to these records? That's the problem. Only a handful had full database access. Klein's good hand clenched. Morrison was one of them. Emily's stomach dropped. What? Your handler, S.A.C. Morrison. He had level 5 clearance at Black Ridge for the past 2 years, part of some joint task force on military medical protocols. Klein met her eyes. He could have accessed any record he wanted. He could have known exactly what was being done to those soldiers. Morrison's clean. I've worked with him for 6 months. You worked undercover for 6 months. How often did you actually see Morrison in person before today? Emily opened her mouth and closed it. The answer was twice. Once for the initial briefing, once when everything went to hell. Every other interaction had been encrypted messages and secure calls. She'd built her entire investigation on instructions from a handler she'd barely met. Trust no one. You think Morrison's part of this? I think Morrison had opportunity and access. I think he put you undercover right when these medical sabotages were ramping up. And I think it's convenient that everyone who could have exposed the medical angle is either dead or in this room. Klein's voice was steady. I'm not saying he's dirty. I'm saying verify before you trust him with anything else. Emily looked at the papers in her hand. What do you want me to do? Find out who else had access to those records. Cross-reference with Morrison's contacts at DIA. See if there's overlap. Klein's expression softened. And Harper? Be careful. If Morrison is clean, he'll want answers. If he's dirty, you just painted a target on your back. I've had a target on my back for 6 months. Not like this. Keating was selling secrets. If there's a medical sabotage operation, that's biowarfare, crimes against humanity. The people behind that won't just kill you, they'll make you disappear. Emily folded the papers and tucked them inside her jacket. The agents outside, do you trust them? I don't trust anyone, but they've kept me alive so far. Don't tell them about this conversation. If someone asks, say I was following up on your statement about the ambush. Nothing more. Klein nodded. Harper, thank you for listening. You're the first person who treated it like it mattered. Emily's throat tightened. It does matter. She left the room. The federal agents looked up. Everything okay? Fine. He's tired. Don't let anyone else in unless they're on the authorized list. Emily paused. And I mean anyone. I don't care what credentials they show. Yes, ma'am. Emily took the stairs down, mind racing. If Morrison was compromised, her entire investigation was suspect. Every piece of evidence had gone through him first. He could have suppressed anything pointing toward medical sabotage. He could have steered her toward Keating while the real architect stayed hidden. But if Morrison was clean and she started investigating him, she'd destroy the one relationship she had with someone who could help. She'd be alone. The lobby was quiet. Emily pushed through the exit and stopped dead. Morrison was leaning against his SUV in the parking lot, coffee cup in hand. He straightened when he saw her. Couldn't sleep? His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp. Emily's hand went to her jacket where Klein's papers were hidden. Checking on Klein, making sure he was secure. At 2 a.m. I don't sleep much. Morrison took a sip of coffee. Neither do I, especially when one of my agents deletes evidence and then disappears for 3 hours. He set down the cup. The voicemail, Harper. Klein's message. I know you got it, and I know you erased it. Emily's pulse hammered, but her face stayed calm. You've been tracking my phone. I've been protecting my agent. There's a difference. Morrison stepped closer. What did Klein tell you? That he's scared, that he thinks someone's trying to kill him, that he doesn't trust anyone. Emily met Morrison's eyes. Can you blame him? No, but I can blame you for going dark. We're supposed to be working together. Are we? Because Klein raised questions about who had access to medical records at Black Ridge. Questions that deserve answers. Morrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. What kind of questions? Emily pulled out Klein's timeline. Every soldier who died in those ambushes had medical contact at Black Ridge within 72 hours of deployment. All reported unusual symptoms, and all those medical interactions were signed off by people with level 5 clearance. She handed him the paper. You had level 5 clearance. Morrison looked at the timeline. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. You think I'm involved? I think I need to verify everyone who had access, including you. Fair enough. Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. This is SAC Morrison. I need my complete personnel file sent to Agent Harper's secure terminal. Everything. Financials, clearance logs, communication records for the past 3 years. Full transparency. He listened. I don't care what protocol says. Do it. He hung up and looked at Emily. Anything else you want? My bank statements? My therapy sessions from when my daughter almost got killed? Morrison. No, it's fine. Trust has to be verified. He handed back the timeline. But while you're verifying me, consider this. If there's a medical sabotage operation, it's been running for at least 2 years. That's longer than I've been your handler, which means whoever's behind it has been embedded deep. Emily felt the weight of that. How deep? Deep enough to build relationships. Deep enough to know which soldiers were deploying where and when. Morrison's jaw set. I've been going through Black Ridge personnel records since we arrested Keating. You know how many medical staff have been there for more than 5 years? How many? 47 doctors, nurses, administrators. Any one of them could have been running this. He paused. Including people you worked with. Emily's mind went to Denise. Christina. All the faces she'd smiled at for 6 months. You think someone I know is involved? I think you need to consider the possibility. Morrison opened his SUV door. Get in. We're going somewhere secure where we can go through this properly. Where? DIA safe house. Encrypted communications, secure servers. No one gets in without my authorization. He looked at her. Unless you'd rather do this alone. In which case, good luck staying alive. Emily stood in the parking lot, Klein's warning echoing. Trust no one. But working alone meant no resources, no backup, no way to verify what Klein had told her. Morrison could be dirty, or he could be the only person trying to help. She got in the SUV. They drove in silence through empty streets. Emily watched Morrison's reflection in the window. His hands were steady on the wheel, his breathing controlled. Everything screamed competent federal agent, but so had Keating. The safe house was a townhouse in Alexandria, wedged between similar buildings. Morrison parked in an underground garage and led Emily through locked doors requiring biometric scans. The interior looked corporate. Bland furniture, fluorescent lights, computers everywhere. Morrison gestured to a conference room. Make yourself comfortable. I'll pull the files. Emily sat down and tried not to think about how easy it would be for Morrison to lock the door and make her disappear. The room had no windows. One exit, cameras in the corners. Morrison returned with a laptop and thick folder. My complete personnel file. Knock yourself out. Emily opened it. Inside was everything. Service record, clearance applications, financial disclosures going back 15 years. She started reading while Morrison made coffee. Find anything damning yet? He asked without turning. You spent $300 at a sports bar in June. Father-daughter bonding. Rachel wanted to watch the playoffs. He brought over 2 mugs. Keep digging. Emily scanned clearance logs. Morrison had been granted Level 5 access to Black Ridge 2 years ago. Authorization came from the Defense Intelligence Agency's Medical Oversight Division. Stated purpose: evaluating security protocols for classified medical research. What's the Medical Oversight Division? Morrison sat across from her. Joint Task Force monitoring military medical facilities handling sensitive work, bioweapon countermeasures, chemical exposure treatments, experimental protocols. Black Ridge was doing all of that. Were you investigating them? Auditing? Making sure their security was tight enough that foreign agents couldn't steal research or sabotage trials? He sipped coffee. I did 3 audits in 2 years. Found minor violations, wrote reports, moved on. Did you flag anything about vaccination protocols? Morrison's eyes narrowed. No. Why? Emily pulled out Klein's forged form. Because someone was using fake authorizations to inject soldiers with something that degraded combat effectiveness. Morrison studied it. This is Vance's signature, but it's forged. The pressure's wrong. He looked up. Where did Klein get this? Physical therapist at Blackridge. She remembered it being strange that Delta Team needed emergency vaccinations right before deployment. Emergency vaccinations require authorization from the Surgeon General's office. Morrison pulled up his laptop and started typing. Let me check if there was any legitimate request. While he worked, Emily continued reading. Everything looked clean, no suspicious deposits, no unexplained travel. Either Morrison was genuinely innocent or the most careful trader she'd ever seen. Morrison's laptop beeped. Got something? There was a vaccination request for Delta Team, but through official channels, signed by the Surgeon General, countersigned by Vance. When? 2 weeks before deployment. Klein's forged form is dated 4 days before. Morrison's fingers flew. Someone submitted a second round without authorization. The official ones were probably legitimate. The forged ones were sabotage. Emily felt pieces clicking. Delta Team got vaccinated twice, first time real. Second time was someone injecting them with something that made them sick before their mission, which means the saboteur had access to medical supplies, vaccination records, and ability to forge forms. Morrison pulled up another screen. I'm cross-referencing everyone at Blackridge with pharmaceutical access and administrative clearance. The computer churned. Names populated the screen. 47 staff members. Morrison started filtering, removing people on leave, people without the right skills, people with alibis. The list narrowed. 20 names, then 12, then 6. Emily recognized 3, Denise Kowalski, Christina Reeves, and Dr. Marcus Webb, head of Blackridge's pharmacy division. Webb had access to everything, Morrison said. Medications, vaccination supplies, medical records. He would have known exactly what to give someone to degrade performance without killing them outright. Where is he now? Morrison checked. Survived the explosion. Staying at a hotel in Arlington while investigators process the scene. He looked at Emily. We need to bring him in. Emily's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Agent Harper. The voice was unfamiliar. Male, professional, with an accent she couldn't place. We need to talk about Dr. Marcus Webb. Who is this? Someone who's been watching this investigation. Dr. Webb is not what he appears. If you bring him in through official channels, he'll disappear before you can question him. How do you know that? Because I recruited him. The line crackled. My name is Colonel James Reeves. I work for a division that officially doesn't exist. Dr. Webb is one of my assets. Emily put the call on speaker. What division? One that handles threats the regular military can't acknowledge. Bioweapon development, experimental combat drugs, medical sabotage designed to degrade enemy forces without leaving evidence. Reeves paused. 3 years ago, we learned a foreign power developed a compound that could compromise soldiers. We needed someone inside military medical facilities to identify and counter it. Webb volunteered. You're saying Webb is undercover? Was undercover. His cover was blown 6 months ago when Keating got paranoid. Webb reported that someone inside Blackridge was using his research to sabotage American soldiers instead of protecting them. We were building a case when you started your investigation. Morrison leaned forward. Why didn't you coordinate with us? Because we didn't know who to trust. Keating had infiltrated command. For all we knew, DIA was compromised. Reeves's voice hardened. We were preparing to extract Webb when Blackridge exploded. Now he's exposed and someone dangerous knows he's been working against them. Who? Emily demanded. We don't know. Webb's last report mentioned a high-level asset he called the physician, someone with authority to approve medical protocols across multiple facilities, someone running the sabotage operation for years. Static. The physician knows Webb can identify them. He has maybe 24 hours before he's eliminated. Emily looked at Morrison. We need to get to him now. Agreed. Colonel Reeves, we're bringing Webb into protective custody immediately. No. Reeves's voice was sharp. You bring him in officially, and the physician will know within minutes. Webb becomes a target. Then what do you suggest? Let me extract him. My team is already in position. We'll debrief him, identify the physician, then hand everything over. Morrison's expression was skeptical. You want us to trust a division that officially doesn't exist. I want you to keep Webb alive long enough to testify. Your way gets him killed. Emily's mind raced. Reeves could be legitimate. Military intelligence had black ops divisions. Or he could be the physician calling to locate Webb. How do we verify you? Emily asked. You don't. You make a choice based on incomplete information. Reeves paused. But if I wanted Webb dead, why call you? I already know where he is. Valid point. Emily looked at Morrison. What do you think? Morrison's jaw worked. Damned either way, but I'd rather take a calculated risk than watch another witness die following protocol. Emily made the call. Colonel Reeves, you have 12 hours to extract Webb and debrief him. Then you bring him to us with everything he knows. If you disappear or we find out you're lying, we'll hunt you down. Fair terms. I'll contact you when we have him secure. The line went dead. Morrison was already on his laptop. I'm not finding anything on Colonel Reeves. You won't. If they're real, they're scrubbed. If they're not, we just let a killer know where to find his victim. Morrison stood, pacing. We need backup. If Reeves is dirty and moves on Webb, we should have eyes on the hotel. Surveillance only, no contact. Emily pulled out Klein's papers again. Something was nagging. Morrison, who approved your level 5 clearance? He checked. Dr. Sarah Vance. Why? Because Vance's signature is on all these forged forms. What if she wasn't just signing? What if she was the physician? Vance is dead. Is she? Did anyone verify identity? Or did we assume because her office was in the blast zone? Morrison's expression changed. He grabbed his phone and called forensics. This is SAC Morrison. I need immediate confirmation on Dr. Vance's remains. He waited. Emily heard muffled conversation. Morrison's face went pale. Say that again. More talk. Thank you. He hung up slowly. They haven't positively identified her. The remains are too badly burned. They're waiting on dental records and DNA. 72 hours minimum. Emily felt cold certainty. She's not dead. Vance staged her death, and now she's eliminating everyone who can expose her. If Vance is the physician, she had access to everything. She could have been sabotaging soldiers for years and no one would have questioned it. Morrison was pulling up new data. Her authority was absolute. And when Keating's operation attracted attention, she used the explosion to fake her death and destroy evidence. Emily stood. We need to find her before she gets to Webb. Morrison's phone rang. He answered, and Emily watched his expression shift to horror. When? How many? He hung up and looked at Emily with dead eyes. The hotel where Webb was staying just exploded. 3 floors collapsed, at least 40 dead. Webb's room was at the center. Emily's stomach dropped. Reeves? Or Vance? Or both? Morrison grabbed his jacket. We need to get to that scene. They ran for the SUV. Morrison drove like hell while Emily coordinated with emergency teams. The hotel was chaos. Fire trucks, smoke billowing, paramedics working on burn victims. Morrison flashed credentials, and they pushed through. The building's front was intact, but the back was a crater. Webb's room had been on the 6th floor. There was no 6th floor anymore. A fire chief approached. Federal agents, stay back. Structure's not stable. We're looking for someone in room 614, Dr. Marcus Webb. The chief checked his tablet. 614 was the epicenter. If anyone was in that room, they're not walking away. Emily scanned survivors being treated. Mostly hotel staff and guests from the intact section. No one matching Webb's description. She was about to turn when she saw him. A man in maintenance uniform, walking calmly away with a tool bag. The face was wrong. The build was wrong. But the walk was identical to someone she'd seen in Blackridge surveillance, Dr. Marcus Webb heading to the pharmacy. There, she pointed. Morrison saw him. That's not... It's him. He changed his appearance. Emily was already moving. Webb! The man turned, saw them, and ran. Emily and Morrison gave chase. Webb was fast, sprinting through the crowd and vaulting barriers. Morrison yelled for backup while Emily focused on not losing sight. Webb cut through an alley. Emily followed, lungs burning. Behind her, Morrison was shouting into his radio. Ahead, Webb reached a parked motorcycle. Emily pushed harder. 10 feet. 5. Webb's engine roared. She grabbed his jacket. He twisted, elbow catching her ribs. Pain exploded, but Emily held on, yanking him off balance. The motorcycle tipped. Webb went down hard. Morrison arrived, weapon drawn. "Federal agents, don't move!" Webb lay on the ground, breathing hard. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Then explain." Emily stood over him, ribs screaming. "Start with why you faked your death. Because the physician found out I was feeding information to Reeves. I had to disappear before she killed me." Webb looked up. "But you got here first, which means she's closer than I thought." "Who is the physician?" Webb laughed, broken. "You arrested Keating and thought you won. But he was just the intelligence leak. The physician is something else." He coughed. "She's been sabotaging soldiers for 3 years, hundreds of deaths, all attributed to combat or enemy action. No one suspected because the evidence burned with the bodies." Morrison crouched. "Give us a name." "Dr. Sarah Vance. But she's not working alone. She's got resources, connections, a network that makes Keating look amateur." Webb's eyes went distant. "And she knows I can identify her handlers, which means I'm dead whether you protect me or not." "We can keep you safe." "Can you?" "She just blew up a hotel to get to me. How many died? 40? 50? Webb's voice broke. "That's what she does. Eliminates threats. Doesn't care about collateral damage." Emily's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "You're looking for the wrong doctor." She showed Morrison. He read it, expression darkening. "It's misdirection." "Or a warning." Emily looked at Webb. "Who else knows about the physician?" "Reeves, a few in his division, and one other person at Black Ridge who helped me gather evidence." Webb swallowed. "A nurse named Emily Harper." The world tilted. "What?" "You were investigating Keating but asking the right questions about medical protocols. I left you breadcrumbs, altered files, suspicious vaccination records. I was hoping you'd piece it together and expose Vance before she figured out what I was doing." Webb's eyes were desperate. "Did you find the evidence?" Emily's mind reeled. The files she'd collected, the patterns she'd noticed. She'd thought that was her work. But Webb had been guiding her, using her investigation as cover. "You used me. I was trying to save lives. Vance was killing soldiers, and I couldn't stop her alone. I needed someone who could build a case." Webb struggled to sit. "I'm sorry, but we're fighting the same enemy." Morrison's radio crackled. "Sir, situation. Dr. Sarah Vance just walked into FBI headquarters in D.C., requesting protective custody. Claims she has evidence of a conspiracy at Black Ridge." Emily's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. Why would she—" Then she understood. Vance was surrendering to control the narrative. She'd claim she was a victim, use federal protection to avoid prosecution. She'd paint herself as whistleblower and Webb as the saboteur. Without solid proof, she'd walk. "We need to get to FBI headquarters," Emily said, "before she destroys everything." Morrison pulled Webb up. "You're coming. You're going to tell them everything. They won't believe me. I faked my death and blew up a hotel. She's a respected officer with 30 years of service." Webb looked at Emily. "Unless you found the evidence I left. Unless you can prove what she's been doing." Emily thought about Klein's timeline, the forged forms, the vaccination records. All circumstantial, all pointing at Vance but not proving she was the physician. Without Webb's testimony, without hard evidence, Vance would survive. "The evidence is there. We just need to connect it. Do it fast. Once Vance is in FBI custody, she'll have lawyers and protection and time to craft a story that makes her untouchable." Webb's voice was quiet. "And everyone who can contradict that story will start dying, starting with me." They loaded Webb into the SUV and drove toward FBI headquarters. Emily's mind raced, trying to figure out how to prove Vance's guilt before she could spin herself as victim. Morrison's phone rang. He put it on speaker. "Morrison." "SAC? Morrison, this is Director Williams at FBI. We have Dr. Vance in custody. She's making serious allegations about corruption at the Defense Intelligence Agency, specifically about Agent Emily Harper." Emily's hands clenched. "What allegations?" "Dr. Vance claims Agent Harper was working with Admiral Keating to leak military intelligence. She says Harper's entire investigation was designed to eliminate witnesses who could expose their partnership." Williams's voice was cold. "She's demanding Harper be arrested immediately." Morrison's jaw set. That's absurd. Harper brought down Keating, or she's the reason the leak operated for 6 months without being caught. Dr. Vance has documentation, financial records showing payments from the same shell corporation funding Keating, all deposited into an account in Harper's name. Emily felt the floor drop. That's not possible. The records are authenticated and notarized. Unless you can prove they're forged, they're admissible. Williams paused. Agent Harper, I need you to come in for questioning, voluntarily, before this becomes an arrest warrant. Morrison looked at Emily, the question in his eyes, do you trust me? Emily took a breath. Director Williams, I'll come in, but first I need to show you something that proves Vance is lying. What evidence? Everything I collected over 6 months. Communications logs, financial transactions, witness testimony, all proving Keating was the leak and Vance was running parallel sabotage. Where is this evidence? Emily looked at Morrison. In a secure DIA facility. Backed up and encrypted. I can have it transferred within the hour. Do it. And Harper? Don't make me regret this chance. The line went dead. Morrison's hands were white on the wheel. If Vance fabricated records in your name, she's been planning this for months. She knew you were investigating. She built a trap. Question is whether my evidence can overpower her fabricated records. It better, because if it can't, you're going to prison for treason and Vance walks free. Emily pulled out her phone and started making calls. She needed the encrypted evidence transferred immediately. Witnesses ready to testify. Everything she'd built over 6 months coming together in one case. The first call didn't connect. Neither did the second. Emily tried the secure terminal. Access denied. Morrison, I can't reach the evidence server. What? It's offline. The entire network is down. Emily's panic rose. Try your codes. Morrison pulled over and grabbed his laptop. Fingers flew. It's not offline. It's been locked. Someone with administrative authority shut down access. Who has that authority? Morrison checked. His face went pale. Dr. Sarah Vance. As chief medical officer at Blackridge, she had override authority for any investigation involving medical protocols. Emily felt the trap closing. Vance had surrendered knowing she could lock down the evidence. Without the files Emily collected, there was no way to prove innocence, no way to prove Keating's guilt, no way to expose the sabotage. Vance had won. There has to be a backup, Emily said desperately. The only other copies would have been at Blackridge, which is rubble. Webb spoke from the back. Not the only copies. I kept my own records. Encrypted and hidden. Everything about Vance's operation, every victim, every forged document. Where? My apartment. Hidden in my desk. Webb leaned forward. But if Vance knows I'm alive, she'll have sent people. Morrison was already turning around. Where? Crystal City. Building on 15th. Webb gave the address. But if her people are already there, an explosion lit the sky ahead, right where Webb's building would be. Morrison slammed the brakes. Through the windshield, Emily saw flames climbing. Another building destroyed, more collateral damage. More dead because they were in the way. Webb made a sound like he'd been punched. She's destroying everything, every piece of evidence, every witness. By the time she's done, there won't be anything left. Emily stared at the flames and felt something snap. 6 months she'd played by the rules, gathered evidence properly, built cases carefully, and now Vance was using those protocols as weapons. The rules weren't working. Emily pulled out her phone. One call. One person who might help. Klein answered on the second ring. Harper, where are you? Klein, I need you to do something dangerous. What? I need you to tell your story. Everything about Delta Team, the sabotage, the medical records, but publicly. Media, military oversight, anyone who will listen. Klein was quiet. If I do that, I paint a target on myself. I know, but it's the only way to force Vance into the open. She can fabricate records and destroy evidence, but she can't silence a surviving witness who goes public. Emily stopped walking. I'm asking you to risk everything. I understand if you say no. What are you going to do? Get her confession, but I need time. I need Vance distracted, under pressure, making mistakes. Emily looked at smoke drifting overhead. Can you do it? Klein's answer came without hesitation. Tell me what you need. Emily smiled for the first time in hours. Everything you've got. Hold nothing back. And Klein, make it loud. She hung up and looked at Morrison, at Webb, at the burning building. What's the play? Morrison asked quietly. Emily's voice was steel. I'm going to FBI headquarters. I'm going to make Vance tell the truth, and I'm going to make sure everyone hears it. Morrison started the engine. Then let's go finish this. The drive to FBI headquarters took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Somewhere in D.C., Klein was making calls, reaching out to reporters. Somewhere in Crystal City, another building burned. Somewhere ahead, a woman in a white coat was spinning lies. And Emily Harper was about to walk into the center of it all with nothing but desperation and rage. The SUV pulled up to FBI headquarters. Emily got out and looked at the building. For 6 months, she'd been invisible, underestimated, dismissed. That ended now. She walked through the doors, badge in hand, and came face to face with 4 federal agents. Emily Harper? That's me. You're under arrest for conspiracy, espionage, and treason against the United States. The handcuffs closed around her wrists with a sound like a cell door slamming shut. The handcuffs bit into Emily's wrists. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes to match, gestured toward the elevators. This way? Morrison stepped forward. I'm her handler, SAC Morrison, DIA. I need to be present during questioning. Your credentials don't apply here. This is FBI jurisdiction. The agent didn't even look at him. Step back or you'll be joining her. Emily caught Morrison's eye and shook her head slightly. Don't fight this. Not yet. He looked like he wanted to argue, but Webb grabbed his arm, pulling him back. The elevator ride was silent except for the hum of machinery. Emily counted floors. Basement level 2. Interrogation rooms. She'd been in dozens during her career, but never on this side of the table. They walked her down a corridor lined with reinforced doors. The agent opened one and guided Emily inside. Standard setup. Metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, mirror on one wall that was obviously two-way glass. The agent removed the handcuffs. Someone will be with you shortly. The door closed. The lock engaged with a heavy click. Emily sat down and forced herself to breathe. Her ribs ached where Webb had elbowed her. Her shoulder throbbed from hitting the ground at the warehouse. She was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, facing treason charges with 0 evidence to defend herself. But she wasn't helpless. Not yet. She looked at the mirror and spoke clearly. I know you're watching. I know Vance is probably in a room just like this, spinning her story. And I know you think you've got this figured out. Emily leaned forward. But you don't. Not even close. No response. She hadn't expected one. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Classic interrogation tactic. Let the suspect stew, get anxious, start second-guessing. Emily used the time to organize her thoughts. What could she prove without access to her evidence files? What witnesses could she call who weren't already dead or compromised? The answer was depressingly short. Klein could testify about Delta Team, but he hadn't witnessed the medical sabotage directly. Webb could confirm the operation existed, but he was a man who'd faked his death and destroyed a hotel. Morrison could vouch for her investigation, but his credibility was tied to hers. If she went down, he went down. She needed something concrete, something Vance couldn't explain away. The door opened. Director Williams entered, followed by a man in an expensive suit who had prosecutor written all over him. Williams sat across from Emily. The prosecutor remained standing. Agent Harper. Williams's voice was neutral. Do you know why you're here? Because Dr. Vance fabricated evidence implicating me in Admiral Keating's espionage operation. Fabricated. Williams pulled out a folder. That's a serious accusation. Can you prove it? Can she prove her accusations are real? She already has. Financial records showing $200,000 deposited into an offshore account in your name. Wire transfers from the same shell corporation that paid Keating and Colonel Briggs. Williams slid papers across the table. Account was opened 6 months ago, right when you started your undercover assignment at Blackridge. Emily looked at the documents, the account number, the routing information, even the digital signature, all appeared legitimate. Vance had been thorough. I never opened that account. Then who did? Vance. Or someone working for her. She had access to my personal information, my social security number, my financial records. She could have opened it remotely, and I'd never know. The prosecutor spoke for the first time. That's convenient. Every piece of evidence against you is fabricated. Every witness supporting you is either dead or compromised. And the only person who can corroborate your story is a handler who might be complicit. Emily met his eyes. If I was working with Keating, why would I spend 6 months building a case against him? Why not just feed him information and collect payments? Because the investigation was cover. You were helping Keating identify which operations were being monitored so he could avoid detection. The prosecutor's smile was cold. Dr. Vance has already explained your methodology. Very clever, actually. Hide in plain sight as the investigator while actually protecting your co-conspirator. Emily felt the trap tightening. Every move she'd made, every decision that had seemed right 6 months ago, was being reframed as evidence of guilt. Where's Vance now? Being debriefed in a secure location. She's cooperating fully. I want to confront her, face to face. Williams shook his head. That's not how this works. Then let me tell you how this works. Emily leaned forward. Vance is a war criminal. She's been sabotaging American soldiers for 3 years, injecting them with compounds that degraded their combat effectiveness before deployment. Hundreds of deaths, all covered up as combat casualties. That's a significant allegation. Williams's expression didn't change. Can you prove it? I had proof. 6 months of evidence stored on DIA secure servers. But Vance locked me out using her administrative override. Convenient that the evidence is inaccessible. She made it inaccessible because it proves her guilt, or there never was any evidence and you're scrambling to create a narrative that explains away your crimes. The prosecutor pulled out another document. Dr. Vance provided us with medical records showing she raised concerns about unusual vaccination protocols 8 months ago. She reported her suspicions to the Inspector General and to DIA oversight. Both agencies told her they were investigating. Emily's stomach dropped. That's a lie. Is it? Because we've confirmed those reports exist, filed properly, dated correctly, signed by Dr. Vance. Williams looked at Emily with something that might have been pity. She was trying to expose the sabotage. You were trying to cover it up. The room felt like it was shrinking. Vance hadn't just fabricated financial records. She'd built an entire paper trail showing herself as the whistleblower and Emily as the traitor. How long had she been planning this? Months? Years? Emily forced her voice to stay calm. Those reports are fake, backdated, and inserted into the system after the fact. You keep saying everything's fake. The financial records, the reports, the documentation. At some point, you need to accept that maybe you're the one lying. I'm not. The door burst open. Morrison stood there, face flushed, with 2 FBI agents trying to pull him back. Director Williams, you need to see this. Now. Williams stood. SAC Morrison, you were told to... Klein went public, Sergeant David Klein, sole survivor of the Delta Team ambush. He just held a press conference outside Walter Reed Medical Center. Morrison held up his phone. It's streaming live on every news network. Williams grabbed the phone. Emily could see the screen, Klein in a wheelchair, surrounded by reporters and camera crews, medical staff trying to get him back inside. His voice was rough but clear. My name is Sergeant David Klein. 6 months ago, my unit was ambushed outside Kabul. 15 soldiers died. I was told it was bad luck, wrong place at wrong time. That was a lie. The feed cut to a reporter asking questions Emily couldn't hear, then back to Klein. We were sabotaged before we ever left American soil. Someone at Blackridge Military Medical Complex injected us with something that made us sick, slowed our reflexes, compromised our ability to fight. 3 members of my team reported feeling ill 2 days before deployment. Command cleared us anyway, and when the ambush happened, we couldn't respond fast enough. Williams's expression was unreadable. The prosecutor had gone pale. Klein continued, I've been gathering evidence for months. Medical records, vaccination logs, testimony from other survivors. And I'm not the only one. Agent Emily Harper of the Defense Intelligence Agency has been investigating this conspiracy since before my team was killed. She's the reason we know the truth. And right now, the FBI has her in custody on fake charges while the real criminal walks free. The feed showed Klein holding up papers. These are forged medical authorization forms signed by Dr. Sarah Vance, Chief Medical Officer at Blackridge. She's been running a sabotage operation for 3 years. She's responsible for hundreds of deaths, and she's currently in FBI protective custody claiming to be a victim. Williams handed the phone back to Morrison. Get Klein into custody immediately. I want him here within the hour. Director, you can't arrest him for telling the truth. I'm not arresting him, I'm protecting him. Because if what he's saying is accurate, his life is in danger. Williams looked at Emily. And if it's not accurate, he just committed defamation on national television. It's accurate, Emily said quietly. Every word. Williams studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to the prosecutor. I want Vance brought to interrogation room 3. Harper goes to room 1. We're doing this face-to-face. Sir, protocol is about to take a back seat to finding out what the hell is actually going on here. Williams's voice was steel. Move. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Emily was moved to a larger interrogation room with more space, more cameras, more witnesses. Federal agents filed in, followed by DIA representatives, followed by military legal counsel. Morrison stood in the corner with Webb, both of them looking like they wanted to be anywhere else. Then Vance walked in. She looked exactly like Emily remembered. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, wire-rimmed glasses, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in positions of authority. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, no jewelry, no makeup. She could have been anyone's grandmother. Vance's eyes found Emily, and something flickered there. Not fear, not anger, something closer to amusement. Dr. Vance, Williams gestured to the chair across from Emily. Please sit. Vance sat. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. Emily had seen this before. People who'd committed terrible crimes but convinced themselves they were justified. They didn't show guilt because they didn't feel it. Dr. Vance, you've made serious allegations against Agent Harper. She's made equally serious allegations against you. We're going to sort this out right now. Williams placed a recorder on the table. Everything said in this room is on the record and can be used in legal proceedings. Do you both understand? Yes, Emily said. Vance nodded. Of course. Good. Dr. Vance, let's start with Delta Team. Sergeant Klein just publicly accused you of sabotaging their deployment. True or false? False. I had nothing to do with Delta Team's ambush. That was a tragedy. But it was the result of intelligence leaked by Admiral Keating and Agent Harper. Emily's hands clenched under the table. That's a lie. Is it? Because I have documentation showing you had access to Delta Team's deployment schedule 3 weeks before they left. You knew where they were going, when they were going, and what their mission parameters were. Vance's voice was perfectly reasonable. You could have easily passed that information to hostile forces. I was investigating Keating. Of course I had access to operational data. Or you were helping him identify which operations to leak. Vance turned to Williams. Agent Harper spent 6 months at Black Ridge supposedly investigating security breaches. In that time, 3 units were compromised and ambushed. The sabotage didn't stop. It accelerated. Emily felt Morrison tense behind her. She forced herself to stay calm. Because you were running the medical sabotage operation while Keating leaked intelligence. 2 separate operations working in parallel. I was trying to stop the sabotage. I filed multiple reports with the Inspector General raising concerns about unusual medical protocols. Vance pulled papers from a folder. All documented, all on record, all showing I was trying to expose this conspiracy while you were covering it up. Williams took the papers and scanned them. Emily could see his expression shifting, doubt creeping in. The documents looked legitimate because they probably were. Vance had the access and authority to insert them into official systems months ago. Dr. Vance, these reports are dated 8 months ago. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I didn't know who to trust. Admiral Keating had infiltrated the command structure. For all I knew, the people I reported to were compromised. Vance's eyes were sincere behind her glasses. I did what I could with the tools I had. And when Agent Harper started her investigation, I thought finally someone was taking this seriously. I didn't realize she was part of the problem until it was too late. The room was silent. Emily could feel the momentum shifting away from her. Vance's story was clean, documented, backed by official reports. Emily's story was circumstantial, dependent on evidence she couldn't access, supported by witnesses who were dead or tainted. Then Webb spoke from the corner. She's lying. Every head turned. Webb stepped forward, his disguise from the hotel explosion still partially in place. Darker hair, Different eyebrows, a scar on his cheek that hadn't been there before. Vance's calm cracked for the first time. Her eyes went wide. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah, well, the explosion didn't go as planned." Webb moved to the table. "Director Williams, my name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I'm the head of pharmaceutical operations at Blackridge. Or I was, before I went undercover for military intelligence to investigate medical sabotage." Williams looked at Morrison. "Can you verify this?" Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. "Colonel Reeves, I've got someone here claiming to work for you, Dr. Marcus Webb." He listened. "I'll put you on speaker." Reeves's voice filled the room. "Dr. Webb is one of my assets. He's been embedded at Blackridge for 3 years investigating bioweapon countermeasures and medical sabotage operations. If he's telling you something, you should listen." Vance's face had gone very still. "This is absurd. Dr. Webb was killed in the hotel explosion this morning. I saw the reports." "You ordered the explosion," Webb said flatly. "You knew I was alive and you tried to eliminate me, just like you've eliminated every other witness who could expose your operation." "I've eliminated no one. I've been cooperating fully with federal authorities. Have you?" "Then explain the forged vaccination authorizations for Delta Team, the ones with your signature but dated after the official requests were filed." Webb pulled papers from his pocket, creased and slightly burned, but readable. "I pulled these from Blackridge's system before the facility exploded. They show 2 sets of vaccination orders for Delta Team. The first set was legitimate. The second set was sabotage." He handed the papers to Williams. Emily could see Vance's jaw tighten. "Those are fake," Vance said, "obviously manufactured by Dr. Webb to cover his own crimes." "Then why do they match the records Sergeant Klein provided to the press 20 minutes ago?" Webb's voice was quiet. He had physical therapists at Blackridge who remembered processing those vaccination requests. They kept copies because something felt wrong. Williams compared the documents. "These signatures don't match exactly. The pressure's different. The spacing is off." "Because one is real and one is forged," Emily said. "Vance signed the legitimate authorization. Someone else forged her signature on the sabotage orders." "Who?" "I don't know yet, but Vance knew about it. She had to know. She was chief medical officer. Nothing happened in that facility without her awareness." Vance's calm was returning. "I oversee hundreds of medical procedures daily. I can't personally verify every vaccination, every blood draw, every routine checkup. If someone was forging my signature, they did it without my knowledge." "Convenient," Webb said. "Just like it's convenient that everyone who could contradict your story is dead. Dr. Allen, who ran the vaccination program, dead in the Blackridge explosion. Nurse Winters, who processed the Delta Team authorizations, dead. Medical Administrator Patterson, who would have noticed the duplicate requests, also dead. I didn't kill anyone. The Blackridge explosion was caused by you," Emily interrupted. "You triggered Keating's contingency plan. You knew the investigation was closing in, so you destroyed the facility and faked your death to eliminate evidence and witnesses." "If I faked my death? How am I sitting here?" "Because your plan changed when you realized you could surrender and control the narrative instead of running." Emily leaned forward. "You walked into FBI custody claiming to be a whistleblower because you knew it would give you protection and credibility. You fabricated financial records implicating me because you needed someone to blame for your crimes." Vance's expression was perfectly calm. "That's an interesting theory. Can you prove any of it?" Emily opened her mouth and closed it. That was the problem. She couldn't prove it. Not without the evidence files Vance had locked down. Williams's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, voice low. When he came back, his expression was grim. "That was the forensics team at Blackridge. They've completed preliminary analysis of the explosion site." "And?" Vance's voice was steady. "They found evidence of multiple explosive devices placed strategically to maximize structural damage and destroy specific areas: medical records storage, administrative offices, and the morgue." Williams looked at Vance. "The morgue is interesting. Why would someone want to destroy a morgue?" "I have no idea." "I do." Morrison stepped forward. "Because that's where Dr. Vance's body was supposed to be. She staged her death, planted a corpse to be found in her office, and set charges in the morgue to destroy any evidence that could identify the body as someone else." "That's speculation," Vance said. "Is it?" Because forensics also found something else. A partially burned identification card in the morgue debris. It belonged to a Jane Doe who was brought into Blackridge 3 days before the explosion. Unidentified homeless woman, died of exposure, no family to claim the body. Morrison's voice was hard. Perfect candidate to use as a stand-in corpse. Vance's calm was cracking. Small tells, a muscle twitching in her jaw, her hands gripping the armrests slightly too tight. I don't know anything about that. Then you won't mind if we exhume the remains that were supposed to be yours and run DNA analysis? Of course not. I have nothing to hide. Emily watched Vance carefully. The woman was good. Decades of practice lying to oversight committees and military brass had made her nearly unreadable. But there was something in her eyes. A calculation. A plan B forming. Williams's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and his face went white. Say that again. Pause. How many? Another pause. Secure the area immediately. He hung up and looked at everyone in the room. There's been an incident at Walter Reed. Someone tried to access Sergeant Klein's room. Security stopped them, but the individual was armed with a syringe containing a lethal dose of potassium chloride. Emily's blood ran cold. Did they catch him? Yes, he's in custody now. William's expression was dangerous. And he's talking. Says he was hired through an encrypted messaging service to eliminate Klein. Payment came from an offshore account. Let me guess, Morrison said. The same account that supposedly belongs to Harper. No, a different account. One that forensic accountants are tracing right now. Williams looked at Vance. Would you like to change your statement, Dr. Vance? Because if that account traces back to you, this conversation is over and you're under arrest. Vance stood up. I want a lawyer. Sit down. Williams' voice cracked like a whip. You surrendered voluntarily. You claim to be cooperating. Walking away now makes you look guilty. I'm invoking my right to legal counsel. You can't compel me to... The door opened. A junior agent rushed in, tablet in hand. Director, you need to see this. Williams took the tablet. His expression shifted from anger to shock to something that looked like disgust. The offshore account used to pay Klein's would-be assassin. Forensic accountants traced it through 3 shell corporations. He looked up at Vance. It's registered to a holding company you created 15 years ago. Long before Blackridge, long before any of this started. Vance's face went very still. You've been planning this for 15 years? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. I've been protecting American interests for 15 years. Vance's calm shattered. You think I wanted to sabotage soldiers? I was trying to develop countermeasures to enemy bioweapons. I was trying to save lives. By killing American soldiers? By testing compounds that would have protected them from enemy attacks. Vance's voice rose. Do you have any idea how many threats our military faces? Chemical weapons, biological agents, neurotoxins designed to incapacitate entire units. I was developing treatments, running trials, advancing science that could have saved thousands of lives. You were running unauthorized human experiments, Webb said quietly, without consent, without oversight, using deployed soldiers as test subjects. Because official channels move too slowly. By the time the FDA approves a treatment, the enemy has already deployed their weapon. Vance's eyes were wild now. I was 3 years ahead of everyone. My research could have changed warfare, could have made our soldiers invincible. Your research killed hundreds of people, Emily said. Acceptable losses in pursuit of a greater goal. Vance slammed her hand on the table. Every scientific advancement requires sacrifice. Vaccines, antibiotics, surgical techniques, they were all developed through trial and error, through experiments that sometimes went wrong. I was doing the same thing, but on an accelerated timeline. William's voice was ice. You're admitting to unauthorized medical experimentation on military personnel. Vance seemed to realize what she'd said. Her mouth opened and closed. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything else. You've said enough. Williams gestured to the agents. Dr. Sarah Vance, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, unauthorized medical experimentation, obstruction of justice, and treason. Take her into custody. Agents moved forward. Vance didn't resist as they cuffed her, but as they led her toward the door, she looked back at Emily. You think you've won, but you haven't. My research exists, my findings are documented, and eventually someone else will continue my work because they'll understand what I understood. that winning wars requires sacrifices that most people aren't brave enough to make. The door closed behind her. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Williams looked at Emily. "Agent Harper, you're free to go. The charges against you are dropped. I apologize for—" "Don't apologize. You were doing your job." Emily stood on shaky legs. "What happens now?" "Now we dig through everything Vance touched for the past 15 years. We identify every soldier who was part of her experiments. We notify families. We build an airtight case." Williams' expression was grim. "And we figure out how someone that dangerous operated undetected for so long." Morrison appeared at Emily's side. "You okay?" "No, but I will be." She looked at Webb. "Thank you for the evidence, for coming forward." Webb nodded. "I should have done it sooner, should have stopped her years ago." "You did what you could with what you had." Emily managed a tired smile. "Just like the rest of us." Williams's phone rang again. He answered, his expression shifting. "Understood. Keep me updated." He hung up and looked at the room. "Klein is secure. The assassin Vance sent is cooperating fully, and the media is having a field day. This story is going to be front-page news for months." Emily felt the weight of it. Delta Team's families would finally know the truth. So would Viper Squad's families, Shadow Unit's families. Hundreds of soldiers who died thinking they'd failed in combat would be revealed as victims of medical sabotage. "I need to make some calls," Emily said. "People who helped me during the investigation. They deserve to know it's over." Williams nodded. "Take all the time you need. We'll be in touch for formal debriefing." Emily walked out of FBI headquarters with Morrison and Webb flanking her like bodyguards. The morning sun was harsh after hours in fluorescent-lit rooms. News vans were already setting up across the street, reporters shouting questions. "How do you want to handle this?" Morrison asked. "I don't. Not today." Emily pulled out her phone. "Today I'm going to see Klein and Marcus and everyone else who survived this nightmare. Tomorrow I'll worry about press conferences." She started making calls as they walked to Morrison's SUV. First Denise, who answered on the third ring. "Harper, please tell me you're okay." "I'm okay. It's over. Vance is in custody." Denise's sob of relief was audible. "Thank God. Christina and I have been watching the news, Klein's press conference. That was brilliant." "It saved my life." Emily climbed into the SUV. "How are you holding up?" "Better now that I know the person who tried to kill us is behind bars. When can we see you?" "Soon. I promise." Emily hung up and called Christina, then Ramos. Each conversation was brief but necessary. These people had risked everything to help her. They deserved to hear directly that their sacrifice mattered. Morrison drove toward Walter Reed. "What are you going to do now?" "What do you mean? Your cover's blown. You can't go back to undercover work. And after this case, every federal investigation is going to look boring." Morrison glanced at her. "So what's next for Emily Harper?" Emily looked out the window at the city passing by. 6 months ago, she'd walked into Blackridge Medical Complex as a nurse nobody noticed. She'd poured coffee and changed bedpans and listened to conversations that would bring down a conspiracy. She'd been underestimated, dismissed, treated like furniture, and she'd used all of that to build a case that exposed war criminals. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm going to take a vacation, somewhere quiet, somewhere no one's trying to kill me. And after that? After that, I'll figure it out." Emily smiled. "Maybe I'll teach. Share what I learned about investigations with new agents." "You'd be good at that." They pulled up to Walter Reed. Klein was in the lobby, surrounded by hospital staff and security. When he saw Emily, his face lit up. "Harper, they told me you were arrested." "I was." "Then Vance confessed to everything on camera." Emily moved to his wheelchair. "You saved my life with that press conference. Thank you. You saved mine first. We're even." Klein looked tired but happy. "What happens now?" "Now you heal. You testify when the trial starts. And you get to tell Delta Team's families that their loved ones didn't fail. They were murdered." Klein's eyes filled with tears. "They deserve to know. They will. I promise." Emily spent the next hour with Klein, going over what would happen next. The investigation would continue for months. The trial could take years. But the truth was out now, impossible to bury or ignore. When she finally left Walter Reed, the sun was setting. Morrison offered to drive her home, but Emily declined. She needed to walk, needed to feel the ground under her feet and remember she was still alive. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Well done, Agent Harper. You're even better than I thought." Emily's blood went cold. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who's been watching your investigation very carefully. Vance wasn't working alone. She had partners, funding, infrastructure. You took down one head of the Hydra. How many more do you think are out there?" Emily stopped walking. "What do you want?" "To see if you're smart enough to realize this isn't over. Vance ran the medical sabotage program, but someone else designed the compound she was testing. Someone else provided the resources. Someone else benefited from the research." "Give me a name." "Not yet. First, I need to know if you're committed to finishing what you started, because if you are, I can help you. If you're not, then we'll never speak again, and you can live with the knowledge that the real architects of this operation are still free." Emily's mind raced. Vance had said her research existed. Her findings were documented. What if she hadn't been the mastermind? What if she'd been a tool for someone even more dangerous? "How do I know you're telling the truth?" "You don't. But ask yourself this. How did Vance fund 15 years of unauthorized research? Where did the compounds come from? Who processed the Shell Corporation payments?" A pause. "The answers are out there. The question is whether you're brave enough to find them." The line went dead. Emily stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, watching the sun disappear behind buildings. She thought about Klein recovering in his hospital bed, about Denise and Christina and Ramos rebuilding their lives, about Morrison and Webb and everyone else who'd risked everything to expose the truth. She thought about Delta Team and Viper Squad and Shadow Unit, soldiers who'd died because someone decided their lives were acceptable sacrifices for scientific advancement. And she thought about the unknown voice on the phone, offering help, promising answers, suggesting that the conspiracy she'd just dismantled was only the beginning. Emily pulled out her phone and made a call. Morrison answered immediately. "Harper, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but I need to ask you something." Emily took a breath. "How much do you know about the compounds Vance was using in her experiments?" "Not much. Why?" "Because someone just contacted me claiming Vance had partners. People who designed the compounds, funded the research, benefited from the findings." Emily started walking again. What if Vance was just the operational director? What if someone higher up was calling the shots? Morrison was quiet for a moment. "If that's true, we've got a much bigger problem than we thought." "I know, which is why I need you to pull every piece of evidence from Vance's operation. Every compound, every test result, every financial transaction. We need to trace it all back to the source." "Harper, you just closed the biggest case of your career. You almost died multiple times. You deserve a break." "I'll take a break when I know every person responsible for Delta Team's deaths is behind bars, not before." Emily's voice was steel. "Are you with me or not?" Morrison sighed. "When have I ever not been with you?" "Good. I'll meet you at the safe house in an hour. Bring Webb if you can find him. And Morrison, don't tell anyone else what we're doing. If there are more people involved, we don't know who we can trust." "Understood. See you in an hour." Emily hung up and looked at her phone. The unknown number had vanished from her call log. Probably spoofed, untraceable. But the message was clear. The fight wasn't over. She thought about the vacation she'd mentioned to Morrison. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. Somewhere she could pretend the world wasn't full of people willing to sacrifice soldiers for profit or power or scientific advancement. Maybe someday she'd get that vacation. But not today. Emily flagged down his cab and gave the driver the address for the safe house. As the city lights blurred past, she pulled out Klein's timeline and studied it again. The pattern was there, hiding in the data. She just needed to find it. Somewhere in Washington, D.C., someone was watching news coverage of Vance's arrest and smiling. Someone who'd funded the research, designed the compounds, orchestrated the conspiracy. Someone who thought they were untouchable. Emily Harper was about to prove them wrong. The cab pulled up to the safe house. Emily paid the driver and walked to the door. Morrison was already inside, laptop open, files scattered across the conference table. Webb sat in the corner, looking exhausted but determined. "Where do we start?" Morrison asked. Emily set down her bag and rolled up her sleeves. "We start by assuming everything we think we know is wrong. Then we rebuild from the ground up. She pulled out the forged medical forms, the financial records, the timeline of compromised missions. Somewhere in this mess was a thread that would lead them to whoever was really running this operation. And Emily Harper was going to pull that thread until the entire conspiracy unraveled. "Let's get to work," she said. The three of them bent over the evidence, comparing documents, cross-referencing data, looking for patterns. Hours passed. Coffee appeared and disappeared. The sun rose on a new day. And in a locked cell in FBI headquarters, Dr. Sarah Vance sat alone and silent, knowing that the secrets she'd kept for 15 years were about to destroy everyone who'd helped her. She smiled, because Emily Harper had no idea what she was walking into. 3 days later, she did. The pharmaceutical company was called Prometheus Biotech. Publicly, they developed combat medical solutions for the Department of Defense. Privately, according to the financial records Webb had decrypted, they'd funneled $18 million to Vance's shell corporations over the past decade. Emily stood outside their headquarters in Bethesda, watching employees stream through the glass doors. Morrison was parked across the street in a surveillance van. Webb was inside already, wearing a visitor badge and a wire. "How's the audio?" Emily asked into her earpiece. Morrison's voice crackled back. "Clear. Webb's approaching the executive floor now." Emily watched the building and thought about the unknown caller who'd contacted her. No more messages had come. Whoever they were, they'd dropped the breadcrumb and disappeared, which meant Emily was operating on incomplete intelligence, following a hunch that could blow up in her face. But hunches were all she had left. Webb's voice came through the earpiece. "I'm at the reception desk, asking for Dr. Adrian Cross, Chief Research Officer." Emily had spent 2 days researching Cross. Brilliant biochemist, former Army medical researcher, patents on 17 different combat-related pharmaceuticals. On paper, he was a patriot developing life-saving treatments, but his signature appeared on procurement orders for the exact compounds Vance had used in her experiments. "Dr. Cross will see you now." A receptionist's voice, tinny through the wire. Footsteps. A door opening. Then Webb again. "Dr. Cross, thank you for meeting with me." "Dr. Webb." Cross's voice was smooth, educated, with the faintest trace of a British accent. "I was surprised to get your call. The news said you died in a hotel explosion." "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." Cross laughed. "Indeed. Please, sit. What can I do for you?" Emily held her breath. This was the critical moment. If Cross suspected anything, he'd shut down the conversation. Webb needed to walk a razor's edge, get Cross talking without revealing the investigation. "I'm here about the Delta Team trials," Webb said. "I know Vance is in custody. I know the program's been exposed. But I also know the research doesn't die with her." Silence. Emily could picture Cross calculating, weighing his options. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," Cross said carefully. "Yes, you are. The compounds you developed for Vance, the trials she ran at Blackridge, the research that cost hundreds of lives." Webb's voice was steady. "I was part of that program. I know how it worked, and I know you were the architect." More silence. Then Cross spoke, and his tone had shifted, less guarded, more curious. "If you know all that, why are you here? Why not go to the authorities?" "Because I think the research has value. Not the way Vance used it. That was reckless, unethical. But the underlying science, the potential to enhance soldier performance, reduce casualties, give our military a decisive advantage?" Webb paused. "That's worth pursuing. With proper oversight this time." Emily's jaw clenched. Webb was playing his role perfectly, but hearing him voice those ideas made her sick. This was how it always worked. Scientific advancement used to justify horrific acts. Cross's response was measured. An interesting perspective. Most people would condemn the entire program. Most people don't understand the stakes. War is changing. Our enemies are developing bioweapons, cognitive enhancers, genetic modifications. If we don't keep pace, we lose. Precisely. Cross's voice warmed. Finally, someone who understands. Vance was brilliant but impulsive. She rushed trials, cut corners, created unnecessary risks. With better methodology, controlled testing environments, proper subject selection. You mean willing subjects instead of deployed soldiers who didn't know they were being experimented on? Well, yes. Informed consent would certainly help with the legal complications. Cross seemed to miss the edge in Webb's voice. I've been developing a proposal for a new program. Military volunteers, comprehensive medical screening, staged trials with proper safety protocols. Everything Vance should have done from the beginning. Emily's earpiece crackled. Morrison's voice. He's confessing. We've got enough for an arrest warrant. But Emily wanted more. She wanted Cross to hang himself completely. Webb, keep him talking. Ask about funding. Webb must have heard her because his next question was perfect. A program like that requires significant resources. Who's backing you? I have several interested parties. Defense contractors who see the commercial potential. Foreign governments looking to license the technology. Private investors who understand that military enhancement is the future of warfare. Cross's voice dropped. Between you and me, the real money is in the civilian applications. Imagine cognitive enhancers for executives, endurance boosters for athletes, longevity treatments for the wealthy. The military trials are just proof of concept. Emily felt rage building in her chest. Hundreds of soldiers had died so this man could develop products for rich people who wanted to live longer and think faster. I'm coming in, she said into her mic. Harper, wait. Morrison started, but Emily was already moving. She crossed the street, walked through the glass doors, and rode the elevator to the executive floor. The receptionist looked up in surprise. Ma'am, do you have an appointment? Emily flashed her credentials. Federal agent, I need to see Dr. Cross immediately. The receptionist's eyes went wide. Emily didn't wait for permission. She walked across his office and opened the door. Cross looked up from his conversation with Webb. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to fear in the span of 3 seconds. Dr. Adrian Cross, Emily said quietly. I'm Agent Emily Harper, Defense Intelligence Agency. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, unauthorized medical experimentation, and conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government. Cross stood up slowly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Really? Because Dr. Webb here has been wearing a wire for the past 20 minutes. We have your full confession on tape. Emily pulled out her phone and played back Cross's voice. Vance was brilliant but impulsive. She rushed trials, cut corners, created unnecessary risks. Cross's face went white. That was a private conversation. You can't use that. Actually, we can. Dr. Webb came here as part of an authorized federal investigation. Everything you said is admissible. Emily stepped closer. You designed the compounds that killed Delta Team. You funded Vance's operation through shell corporations. And you were planning to do it all again with a new program. I was trying to advance military science. You were trying to profit from human experimentation. Emily's voice cut like a blade. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison for it. Federal agents poured through the door. Morrison had been ready the moment Emily went in. They cuffed Cross while reading him his rights. He was still protesting, still claiming he'd done nothing wrong, still insisting his research was valuable. Emily watched them lead him away and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just exhaustion and the knowledge that this wasn't really over. There would be more people like Cross and Vance, more people willing to sacrifice others in pursuit of advancement or profit or glory. But for now, this chapter was closed. Morrison appeared at her elbow. That was reckless, going in without backup. I had backup. You were 30 seconds away. Emily managed a tired smile. Besides, I wanted to see his face when he realized he'd been caught. How'd it feel? Empty. Emily looked at Webb, who was removing his wire. We stopped 2 monsters, but the system that enabled them is still intact. Nothing's really changed. Maybe not. But we saved the next round of victims. That has to count for something. Emily nodded. It did count. It just didn't feel like enough. The next week was a blur of depositions and debriefings. Cross was formally charged and denied bail. His assets were frozen. Prometheus Biotech's board of directors launched an internal investigation that revealed 3 other executives had known about the unauthorized trials. All of them were arrested. Vance, facing life in prison, started cooperating. She provided names, dates, financial records, everything she could trade for a lighter sentence. The conspiracy unraveled like a badly knit sweater, each thread leading to another until the entire operation lay exposed. Emily spent her days in conference rooms, walking prosecutors through 6 months of evidence. She testified before a military oversight committee. She gave a deposition to the families of Delta Team's fallen soldiers. That last one nearly broke her. Sitting across from parents and spouses and children, explaining how their loved ones had been used as test subjects, watching their grief turn to rage, Emily had never felt more like she'd failed. She'd exposed the truth, but she couldn't bring anyone back, couldn't undo the damage, couldn't make any of it right. "My son died believing he'd failed his team," one father said, voice shaking. "You're telling me he was murdered before he ever got to the battlefield?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize to me. You're the one who found the truth. You're the one who made sure the people responsible will pay." The father stood and extended his hand. "Thank you, Agent Harper. You gave us answers when everyone else wanted to bury this." Emily shook his hand and barely made it to the bathroom before she started crying. Morrison found her there 20 minutes later, mascara ruined, eyes red. "You okay?" "No, but I will be." Emily splashed water on her face. "How many families are left?" "That was the last one." "You're done." Emily looked at herself in the mirror. She'd lost weight during the investigation. Her hair needed cutting. She had shadows under her eyes that looked permanent. 6 months of being invisible had taken a toll she was only now starting to see. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you take that vacation you mentioned, somewhere quiet, somewhere you can decompress." Morrison leaned against the wall. "The director wants to meet with you next week. Something about a commendation and a new assignment. But that can wait." Emily dried her face. "What kind of new assignment?" "The kind where you train other agents in undercover operations, share what you learned at Black Ridge, help build better investigators." Morrison smiled slightly. "The director was impressed, said you showed more initiative and dedication than agents with twice your experience. I almost got arrested for treason." "But you didn't. You exposed a conspiracy that had been operating for 15 years. You brought down war criminals. You saved lives." Morrison's expression was serious. "You did good work, Harper. Accept that." Emily wanted to argue, but she was too tired. "Okay, I did good work." "Damn right you did." They walked out of the federal building together. The late afternoon sun was warm. Spring had arrived while Emily was buried in interrogation rooms and evidence files. "Want to grab dinner?" Morrison asked. "Rachel's in town. She wants to meet the woman who saved her life." Emily smiled. "I'd like that." They went to a small Italian place in Georgetown. Rachel was already there, looking healthier than the terrified college student Emily had pulled away from Marshal Grant's gun. She stood up when Emily approached and pulled her into a hug. "Thank you. I know Dad said it 100 times, but I need to say it too. You saved my life." Emily hugged her back. "You saved yourself. That elbow to Grant's ribs, that was all you." They sat down and ordered food. The conversation was light, carefully avoiding anything related to the case. Rachel talked about school, about her plans to study criminal justice, about how the whole experience had changed her perspective on safety and vulnerability. "I used to think bad things happened to other people," Rachel said. "Now I know they can happen to anyone, but I also know there are people like you fighting back. That helps." Emily thought about that later, lying in bed in her apartment. People like you fighting back. Was that what she was? A fighter? She'd never thought of herself that way. She'd been a nurse who noticed things, an agent who followed orders, someone who'd stumbled into an investigation that became all-consuming. But maybe Rachel was right. Maybe fighting back didn't require being fearless or perfect. Maybe it just required showing up and refusing to quit. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the arrest. You did well." Emily stared at the message. The same person who'd contacted her after Vance's arrest. The one who'd warned her about deeper conspiracies. She typed, "Who are you?" "Someone who recognizes talent when they see it. You dismantled a 15-year operation in 6 months. That's impressive." "What do you want?" "To offer you a choice. You can take your commendation, accept your new training position, and spend the rest of your career teaching other agents what you learned. Safe, respectable, comfortable." Emily waited. There was obviously a second option coming. "Or you can keep fighting. There are more operations like Vance's out there, more people willing to sacrifice soldiers for profit or power, more conspiracies that need exposing." A pause. "I can help you find them, but it means going back into the dark." means risking everything again. Emily looked at the message for a long time. She thought about Delta Team and Viper Squad and Shadow Unit, about Klein in his wheelchair and Marcus recovering from shrapnel wounds, about all the families she'd sat across from, delivering truths they'd never wanted to hear. She thought about the vacation she'd promised herself, the quiet place where no one was trying to kill her. Then she typed, "I'll think about it." "Fair enough? You know how to reach me when you decide." The number vanished from her call log. Emily set down her phone and stared at the ceiling. She should delete the messages, report the contact to Morrison, follow protocol. Instead, she saved the number under a new contact, the architect. Because whoever they were right. There were more operations out there. More people who needed someone to notice what everyone else overlooked. More truths that needed exposing. And Emily Harper had just proven she was very good at exposing truths. The commendation ceremony happened 2 weeks later at the Pentagon. Emily stood in her dress uniform, uncomfortable with the attention, while a 3-star general pinned a medal to her chest and read a citation about exceptional service and dedication to justice. Klein was there in his wheelchair, looking proud. Marcus was there, walking with a cane, but walking. Denise and Christina and Ramos were there, all of them wearing smiles that didn't quite hide the trauma they'd survived. Morrison stood in the back with Webb, both of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, but knowing they needed to be there. And in the audience, scattered among Pentagon officials and military brass, were the families of the fallen soldiers, the ones Emily had sat with, the ones she'd given answers to. When the ceremony ended, they didn't applaud. They stood in silence, a gesture of respect that meant more than any medal. Emily found Klein afterward. "How are you doing?" "Better. Physical therapy's helping. Doc says I might walk again someday." Klein smiled. "Got a job offer too. Military Oversight Committee wants me to consult on medical protocol reviews. Make sure what happened to Delta Team never happens again." "You gonna take it?" "Yeah. Someone needs to keep an eye on these people. Might as well be someone who knows what failure looks like." Klein looked at Emily. "What about you? Training position?" "That's the plan." "You don't sound convinced." Emily shrugged. "I'm still figuring it out." "Well, when you do, let me know. I have a feeling whatever you decide is going to be interesting." Emily spent the rest of the day shaking hands and accepting congratulations from people she'd never met. By evening, she was exhausted and desperate to leave. She slipped out a side entrance and found Morrison waiting. "Trying to escape?" "Is it that obvious?" "Only to people who know you." Morrison handed her a folder. "This came across my desk today. Thought you'd want to see it." Emily opened it. Inside was a comprehensive report on Prometheus Biotech's shutdown. All research programs terminated, all unauthorized trials documented and reported, compensation packages being prepared for every victim's family. "It's not enough," Emily said quietly. "No, but it's something." Morrison looked at the Pentagon behind them. "You changed things today, Harper, not just by exposing Vance and Cross. You changed how people think about oversight, about accountability. Every medical facility in the military is being audited right now. Every research program is being reviewed. Because of you." Emily closed the folder. "I was just trying to find the truth, and you did. Against impossible odds, with no support, while everyone underestimated you. You did it anyway." Morrison's voice was quiet. "That's heroism, Harper. Real heroism. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that actually saves lives." Emily felt tears threatening again. She was so tired of crying. "I need that vacation." "I know. Where are you going?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere I can think." Morrison nodded. "Take all the time you need. The training position will be there when you get back. Or something else if you decide that's not the right fit." Emily looked at him. "Thank you for everything. For believing me when no one else did." "You made it easy. You were right about everything." Morrison smiled. "Now go. Disappear for a few weeks. Come back when you're ready." Emily went home and packed a bag. She'd decided on the location during the ceremony, a cabin in the mountains of Colorado that she'd rented sight unseen. No internet, no phone service, just silence and space to process everything that had happened. She drove through the night, watching the city disappear in her rearview mirror. By dawn, she was in the mountains, following a dirt road to a cabin that looked exactly like the photos. Small, isolated, perfect. Emily spent the first 3 days sleeping. 16-hour stretches where her body finally admitted how exhausted it was. She dreamed of Blackridge and explosions and burning buildings, but she also dreamed of quieter things. Conversations with Klein, Marcus's smile when she'd visited him post-surgery, the families who'd thanked her for giving them answers. On the 4th day, she started hiking. Long walks through pine forests, breathing clean air, letting the mountain silence wash over her. She thought about the unknown contact, the architect, about the choice they'd offered, safe career or dangerous mission. On the 7th day, she made her decision. Emily pulled out her phone and drove to the nearest town with cell service. She sat in a coffee shop and composed a message. "I'm in. Tell me what you need." The response came back within minutes. "I need someone who sees what others miss. Someone who refuses to quit. Someone who understands that fighting monsters sometimes means becoming invisible." A pause. "I need Emily Harper." "What's the mission?" "There's a military contractor called Aegis Strategic Solutions. They provide security services to embassies and military installations worldwide. But according to my intelligence, they're also trafficking weapons to hostile forces, profiting from both sides of conflicts, and they're very good at hiding it." Emily's pulse quickened. "You want me to go undercover? I want you to do what you do best. Become someone they don't notice. Watch. Listen. Build a case no one can ignore." The architect's message continued. "This is bigger than Vance, bigger than Prometheus. If Aegis is doing what I think they're doing, they're responsible for destabilizing entire regions. Thousands of deaths, maybe more." Emily thought about Klein's words. Someone needs to keep an eye on these people. Might as well be someone who knows what failure looks like. She typed, "When do I start?" "Whenever you're ready. There's no rush. Take your time, heal, prepare. This isn't a sprint. I'm ready now." A pause. Then, "I was hoping you'd say that. Check your secure email. I'm sending you everything I have on Aegis. Study it. Find the angle. Then we'll discuss insertion strategy." Emily closed her phone and sat in the coffee shop, watching people go about their normal lives. Ordering lattes, checking emails, complaining about traffic. None of them knew what she knew, that there were people out there willing to sacrifice anyone for profit, and that someone needed to stop them. She thought about the training position, the safe career, the life where she'd never have to be invisible again. Then she thought about Delta Team, about the father who'd thanked her for giving him answers, about Klein dedicating his recovery to making sure it never happened again. Emily Harper had spent 6 months being underestimated, dismissed, treated like furniture, and she'd used all of that to bring down a conspiracy that had operated for 15 years. She could do it again. The vacation ended the next day. Emily drove back to DC, already planning her cover story, her approach, her strategy for infiltrating Aegis Strategic Solutions. She met with the architect in person, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes who'd spent 40 years in military intelligence. "I've been watching you since the Blackridge investigation started," the architect said over coffee. "The way you built your case, the patience you showed, the way you used being invisible as an advantage. That's rare. Most agents want to be noticed. You understood that being overlooked is sometimes the greatest power you can have." It didn't feel powerful at the time. It never does, but look at the results. The architect slid a folder across the table. "This is Aegis. Study it. Find your way in. Then we'll make them wish they'd never heard your name." Emily opened the folder and started reading. Within an hour, she'd found her angle. Within a week, she'd built her cover identity. Within a month, she was embedded at Aegis Strategic Solutions as a low-level administrative assistant no one paid attention to. And once again, Emily Harper became invisible. But this time, she knew exactly what she was doing. 3 months into the Aegis investigation, Emily sat in a supply closet with a recording device, listening to executives discuss arms shipments to sanctioned nations. She'd already documented 17 violations of international law. She had financial records showing bribes to foreign officials. She had emails proving senior leadership knew exactly what they were doing. She thought about Morrison's words, real heroism. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that actually saves lives. Emily Harper wasn't a hero. She was just someone who noticed things, someone who refused to quit, someone who understood that the people most dangerous to corrupt systems are the ones those systems overlook. She was a nurse who'd become an investigator, an agent who'd learned that being invisible was sometimes the greatest advantage, a woman who'd been underestimated her entire career and finally figured out how to use that as a weapon. And she was just getting started. The recording device captured another damning conversation. Emily smiled in the darkness and added it to her growing evidence file. Somewhere in that building, executives were making decisions that would cost lives. They thought they were untouchable. They thought no one was watching. They were wrong. Because Emily Harper was always watching. And when she was ready, when her case was airtight and her evidence was irrefutable, she would bring down Aegis strategic solutions the same way she'd brought down Vance and Cross and Keating. Quietly, carefully, completely. The supply closet door opened. A security guard looked in. "What are you doing in here?" Emily stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Sorry, just taking inventory of office supplies. We're running low on printer paper." The guard nodded and walked away. Just another invisible employee doing invisible work. Emily packed up her recording device and went back to her desk. She had a meeting in 15 minutes with the CFO, who was about to accidentally reveal the location of their off-books weapons cache. She pulled out her notes and prepared her questions. Innocent questions. The kind a simple administrative assistant would ask. The kind of questions that would destroy an empire. Emily Harper smiled and got to work, because this was who she was now. This was what she did. She found the truth in places no one else thought to look. She exposed the people everyone else overlooked. She fought battles in the shadows and won them without anyone knowing her name, and she wouldn't have it any other way. The invisible ones, the overlooked, the underestimated, the dismissed, they were the most dangerous. Emily Harper had proven that, and she was going to keep proving it for as long as there were monsters who needed exposing and truths that needed telling. The world didn't need more heroes in uniforms and medals. It needed people willing to pour the coffee and listen to the secrets and build the cases that brought empires down. It needed people like Emily Harper. And there were more people like her out there than the powerful realized. That thought carried Emily through the rest of her day, through the meetings and conversations and careful documentation. It carried her home that night, to her quiet apartment where no one knew she was building another case that would change everything. It would carry her through whatever came next. Because Emily Harper had learned the most important lesson anyone could learn. The quietest voice in the room is often the one most worth hearing. And she was done being quiet about the truths she'd found. She was done being invisible by accident. Now she was invisible by choice. And that made all the difference.